Okay, that's interesting, Brian. Okay, howdy, David. Howdy, everybody. Oh, uh, how's everybody doing with the cold? I know, even the normally warmer sections of the country are not too warm at the present time. Thank you, honey bunny. Chris will again not be here tonight. You got frozen pipes for 2 days now? Damn, Shaggy. Uh, he's still just got no communication. He's feeling okay. Let's see if I can get this camera down just a little bit. That's a little better. And Lauren continues to heal up. And we got the impact mill basically done. I forgot to take the camcorder out today to get the end of that and post a video, but I'll have one in the next couple of days. We've got a belt tensioner on it. Everything seems to be working fine. And it's a lot stronger than it was. So that's a good thing. The base frame made out of channel iron is just a lot stronger idea than the tubing. It's also a lot easier because you can get to the bottom to bolt things on much easier. So I would say that that's a superior methodology, is to just go ahead and use the channel iron from now on. We'll be working on a plan. I think he meant to say Southern Arizona. But anyhow, I will work on a design for a more robust mill. Call it the Big Bob mill. And the idea is to come up with a design that is reasonably competitive in its capabilities to the Stutenroth 2-ton per hour mill. Now, mind you, the Stutenroth 2-ton per hour mill does not include classification. It's basically, you might be able to put 2 tons an hour through it if you were doing good, but with classification and stuff, it's going to be reduced substantially. Hi, Arthur. How's it going? I don't recall seeing you before. Quartzite. How cold is it there in Quartzite right now? And what kind of bedrock are you busting? I'm guessing you're doing a little hard rock mining over there, but I'm not familiar with your particular situation. Yeah, well, it's good for maintenance if you got a big shop like Lauren has. We've got a number of vehicles and stuff to deal with. Hello, Mr. Lodak. I know we got some pins on a skid steer to replace. Compañeros desde Arizona, huh? Sounds good, Rock. How much have you done in Latin America? How much Spanish do you know? But anyhow, so we've also got some work to do on his big diesel truck. Forget what it is. I think it's like injector lines or something like that. There's some kind of leaking that's going on. And right now, finding good mechanics is tough in this neck of the woods. So the ones that are out there tend to be pretty busy. And so we'll probably do it ourselves, save money that way too, now that it's wintertime. And I think there was another one or two major jobs to do also. But the work rearranging and organizing the shop seems to be pretty well done. And I'm pretty pleased with the way the impact mill turned out. Um, Once we design the new impact mill, the bigger one, basically it'll have kind of the same design chamber and the same size, except it's going to be from 8 to 12 inches in depth. Um, and that um, will give us a lot more capacity, um, but also build it in a much more robust manner, so that it's going to be more of a, instead of a testing and bulk sampling mill, it's going to be more of a light production mill to a medium production mill. Hey, Rock, all they got to do is see your wallet down there, and you'll be romancing as many ladies as you want. Yeah, probably more than you want. Yeah, I know a lot more of the terminology of mines than I do about a lot of other stuff. That's for sure. Um, but anyhow, I say so. That's one of my things to do here. Part of doing this improvement on the impact mill was to test a few things too. Huh, Arthur? Trying to chase down the pay streak in a wash. Yeah, sometimes it that gold can get into the bedrock if it's, decayed enough. It depends on where you're at, Jeff. Um, I it's all going to be about balancing, but even then, that balance is going to change with the way the connecting rods would work and things like that. Um, I think you might. I mean, well, you'd also say I don't think it would work out too well. It's going to be doing a little kind of strange stuff. Um, a camshaft, maybe. You could put something on the thing. That's why people generally just, a chainmail is real simple. Um, my plan on this next iteration of the bob mill is I'm going to dramatically increase the size of the shaft, um, and I'm thinking that um, the system that Tricky Dicky used on his rotor, where he basically just used set screws to hold the rotor on. Um, I think, he says it works fine. And I think he might be, right in terms of it should, um, the energy is in the rotor itself, just that mass. And so if it hits anything or whatever, that mass, that inertia is what's going to go through it. The set screws, I don't think are going to have too much um, difficulty, because they'll just be using it to bring it up to speed. Yeah. So I think that's a nice idea. It makes it a lot easier to change the rotor for whatever reason. And so I'm thinking that's a good way of doing it. Yeah, I'm just wondering about how well it would work in terms of balance, honey bunny. That's what I'm thinking of. Uh, I I like the idea of two pillow block bearings on the same side of the chamber simply because it allows you to remove the chamber cover real easy. What is a doable and practical and not really expensive way to get 70 mesh minus from crushing and pulverizing quartz? That would depend on how much of minus it is below 70. If it's mostly 200 mesh and up, that should be quite easy to do with gravity separation techniques. You need to pull, you need to pulverize it, but almost any well-run gravity separation technique should get the 200 mesh plus pretty efficiently. Um, the stuff I've been testing seems to be bottoming out in the 3 to 500 mesh range, depending upon which thing I'm using. And so that, say, have you done, first of all, do you have a pulverizer pike poke? And if so, what have you done in terms of testing to see what the size of the gold particles is? That's the first thing you're going to need to do, because that is critical to everything in the separation process. You need to see how big the gold particles are, whether or not they're crystal locked or whether they tend to break away from the matrix pretty easy, things like that. That is your first thing that you have to do. And for that, you'll need some kind of a pulverizing technique. A dolly pot can work for small scale testing, but it gets real old real fast. I would say that if you're going to do some testing and you don't have a pulverizer, something like a Cobra crusher or something like that is relatively easy and cheap. You can also buy little gas powered light duty impact mills for, I don't know, 1,500 or something like that. Somebody help me out if you can think of one there. And they make little chain mills, about this big around with a, like a 3 or 4 horsepower gas engine, maybe 5 or 6. And they can do testing size samples. The big problem is to get good numbers or a good idea, you need a fair sample. And, 20 to 50 pounds through a dolly pot will take you a couple of months. So that's why you're really going to need a pulverizer to answer that question fairly quickly. Okay. The little light duty ones will do a decent job on medium to soft rock for a modest amount of time. They'll probably wear out real fast if you're like throwing hard quartz in it. So that's an important question. What do you have in pulverizing equipment, and what is the general character of the rock? Is it relatively soft? Is it tough and hard? What are we dealing with that? That's correct, Brian. We're using a conical bottom tank as a vat leach, an agitated tank leach. And then both the tailings pond is all, well, not tailings pond, tailings pad, okay, as both a clarifying filter and as a secondary recovery zone. Hi, Kenneth. And so as it's sitting on the pad, it also has more time to dissolve. Um, I took the sample to the lab, and we should have some interesting results here next week on exactly how much recovery we got over 2 months. Very small chain mill. Okay, that's not bad. Classifiers to 100 mesh. That's good. Um, and have you uh, tried using my panning technique on the tailings and seeing if you're losing much in the um, tailings of something below 150 mesh, or is there basically pretty clean tailings? Okay, because that's important. Um, as long as you're not getting much below 150 mesh, then you should be able to crush and gravity separate and be in pretty good shape. Keep those tailings though, because you may want to leach them later, depending on the price of gold and the number of other things. Vat onto heap leach. Essentially, yes, Brian. Um, very hard quartz. Okay. That is going to cause very high wear rates, which can be an issue. So if you're using a chain mill in like a round chamber, your chains are going to wear out fast, but you're expecting that. The chamber itself is going to wear out fast, though. So that's not going to be a good thing. You might want to put a bunch of wear bars in it. Is this a circular chamber? I'm presuming so, um, Pike Poke. Because if it is, then you can reduce a lot of wear by putting striker bars in there. You may have to shrink your chains up a little bit to do that. Will heating up the quartz help? Well, heating and quenching will, but it also is going to be very expensive. And let me make a diagram for Pike Poke here, because I agree with Brian, not Brian, Brian, hard facing. Okay. If you have a circular chamber like this, and then you got your shaft and your chains like this. Okay. As this spins, it's just like a grinder working in here on the inside of the mill. If you put bars like this on the inside of the mill, you can do two things. First of all, in between them you have very little wear, but you also focus the wear on the leading edge of these bars. Now, you're either going to want to weld them in there or drill and tap the bars and then bolt them from the outside so the fastener doesn't get worn off inside. Okay. But these leading edges, what you've done here is you've created a very focused wear. You've taken all the wear that's going here in your previous thing, like from here, and in here you have created 90% of the wear in this little area right here. Most of the wear out here drops hugely. That allows you to weld what's known as hard facing on those edges, which is what my impact mill design is for. And by focusing the wear in certain small areas, the hard facing, which is easy and relatively inexpensive to replace, you just weld another bead on there, will allow you to save the chamber and things like that. It really, really makes it a lot better, Okay, so you're not getting you're not getting much in the way of 150 mesh minus, that would be good. I'm not sure how long that would work, Honey Bunny. And you're really got issues with the supply of files, so to speak. And David is correct. You could also flip the bars over and you have other striking surfaces there. And say my design is the wear plates on the rotor, which by the way has much more wear than the chamber itself. They're reversible, you know. They're not reversible in all dimensions. They can be rotated 180 degrees like this, so you have two more edges that are out there, but they're not reversible like this because I want those hard face beads to be sticking out, make them thick. And that way, if you were to go like this, it wouldn't bolt up as well, you know? And I say that's one of the ways you can do that. I use, well, Jimmy's mill, we built out of T1 tempered plate. It's about the least expensive hardened plate you can get. They make better grades, but that's some pretty good stuff compared to mild steel. The one I've got right now, it was a prototype. It's all made out of mild steel. And that also means that I can see the wear quicker and easier. Okay, sometimes too quick. But it really, it worked very, very well for a prototype. I knew there was going to be mistakes. I don't think I made too many significant mistakes. Okay. But, you know, it definitely was a good start. And that mill I made for Jimmy incorporated a lot of lessons learned. Whenever possible, Honey Bunny, winning number one. But anyhow, the few kind of remaining weak points before Jimmy's, the shaft itself can get a fatigue wear in it. The plates that I welded onto the shaft get fatigue wear in the welds and things like that. How small a material from jaw crusher to impact crushing? I would say 1/2 inch minus should be more than adequate. That's basically what I use. I've got a 1/2 inch grizzly on the thing. Generally, the RC46 jaw will give me about 3/8 minus. And it say 1/2 inch minus seems to work well on the Stutenroth. I've had things go in there like 1 inch, and it's a massive rotor and impact bars and stuff like that, and it eats it up. But I'm sure the wear rate is increased. The smaller the material you put into the impact mill, the lower your wear rate will be. Okay, because the highest intensity impacts are, and the less impacts you need to turn it into dust. But I'd go with a 1/2 inch minus unless you got a real small mill, and then you might want to crush more. Depends. Do you have a jaw crusher? You know, if you got a jaw crusher, it's pretty much whatever the jaw crusher puts out, unless you're screening it and then rerunning it through the jaw crusher. But jaw crushers generally ain't going to get you much below a certain amount. Once it gets to that, the jaws just don't, meet, so it can fall through easily. Yeah, the smaller the crusher on the crusher, the more power it takes, and the lower the throughput. Okay, if you choke it down, the term "choke it down" is perfectly legitimate in this case. You will reduce the throughput. Um, and I say I start with a 4x6 jaw, crush it to about 3/8 minus. Okay, and then straight to the jaw. I actually, because moisture in the jaw feed tends to squish and stick when that happens, I have found I get a lot better throughput with a lot less hassle by screening it to half-inch minus before I put the oversize in the jaw crusher. A lot of that fine stuff is, the vast majority of the fine stuff is now gone, and it doesn't stick nearly as well. Plus, depending upon where I'm getting my material at, I may run anything from 35 to 70% half-inch minus. Why bother crushing it? You know, just it's ready to go for the student rod. So when I get the buckets back from the field, I will be screening and feeding through the jaw crusher. I can screen it much faster than the jaw crusher can eat it up, the oversize. So I'll be screening, running it through the jaw crusher, hauling the stuff over to the what do you call it, to the stockpile next to the Stutenroth, and go from there. But it really speeds things up if you can classify first, and it, it makes life a lot simpler. When, oh God, there's some things that are just horrendously annoying, and muck sticking in a jaw crusher is one of them. Okay. I do not use the jaw crushers, the rollers on the RC46 unless I'm crushing for sampling. There's no sense wearing out $1,000 worth of rollers when you're going to be sending it through the Stutenroth anyhow. So when I'm crushing for production, I back the rollers apart so that it just falls right between them and save the wear and everything. When I'm going to do some sampling, I put those rollers together and do it. And then as soon as I'm done with the samples, back them apart again. I say those are, well, I don't know what they are now. They're probably $750 a piece or more now. They used to be $500 each. And getting them out involved disassembly, pulling the whole roller assembly out, heating the bearings and pressing the bearings off, things like that. It's a real pain in the ass, and better to just not use them at all unless there's a purpose. Likewise, the RC46 used to have something they called the roller scraper. And basically what it was a piece of angle iron on springs that you could crank some nuts and just push it up between the inside the output opening of the rollers. So it's coming out, it's running and grinding it against the roller scraper. Okay. And it works. And it wears the rollers out at 10 times the speed. Okay. And what is your throughput, Brian? 1.5 horsepower. It must be a fairly small jaw crusher. Ball mills tend to be very energy efficient. The negative is they tend to be a bit pricey in purchasing cost, and they also tend to be a bit, well, let's see, my mind just went off. They're high efficiency. Oh, and they're not as portable either. See, like you're looking at 2,000 pounds in 8 hours. Okay. So you're running, that's, if I'm not mistaken, 250 pounds an hour. My brain does not work near as good as it used to. 250 pounds an hour. Okay. Take care, Rock. See you soon. Um, I can do that with the RC46 does about twice that. The Stutenroth, that's that's a pretty good speed for the Stutenroth. It can do more if you got a medium soft rock and it's nice and dry. Yeah, I'm pure terribly unqualified for that now, David. So I say that's and another thing, Brian, make sure that if it's an end discharge ball mill, remember it's a gold trap. You are getting gold concentrated in the mill. It's just guaranteed. And so, um, hopefully, it's fairly easy to clean out. As a general, with the ball mills, if they have liner plates, you're going to want to pull the liner plates and clean behind them and stuff for that. You've tested for that and not found any. What size is your largest size gold? And say it is an end discharge ball mill. Put a spiral track on the discharge. Yeah, should work, but again, that's now you got another wear part basically. I mean that ball mills don't need a whole lot of maintenance, but when they need maintenance, it tends to get pretty pricey. So I say it's just one of those things that they're well known to be a potential gold trap. um, anyhow, so that's kind of thing. You put a test cup on the low point. No, you'd test port. Okay, you drain the whole thing and then pan it down or run it over a concentrator. Okay, but I say there's nothing wrong with the ball mill. There's a reason the big boys use them. They are very efficient. For a small guy, they're kind of difficult. How much does your ball mill weigh, do you think, Brian? Because my impact mill, which runs pretty consistently at about 175 pounds an hour, it'll go more than that sometimes in the right conditions, but 175 pounds an hour, taking half-inch minus to, 90% passing 60 mesh, I can move around by myself, no problem. Yeah, the balls are about 300 pounds. It's what, about a 3 foot by 3 foot ball mill, Brian? Or is it a little smaller than that? Because your mill should probably be in the neighborhood to handle 300 pounds of balls, including engine and everything. You're probably looking at almost 1,000 pounds of mill and engine and drive, aren't you? The tanks and frame 300 pounds. Yeah, again, all totaled, yeah, that's pretty light. He says tanks. I'm thinking maybe he's using like propane tanks, like 100 pound, 100 gallon propane tank or something like that. Am I correct, Brian? Yep. There we go. So that's not going to last a long time. On the other hand, it's relatively inexpensive. Sometimes, depending upon how hard it is to, change things out or whatever, instead of making it durable, make it cheap and inexpensive and easy to replace. Um, Yeah, that's it. So those are two different ways of solving the same problem, which is economy. And if you're going on a small scale, the make it cheap and easy to replace can be substantially the best way to go about it. Cheap and expensive and easy to replace. That's not your like your old Gore fence. Okay, Lars. Yep. Oh yeah. I say for traveling, or if you're doing something where you're maybe reconfiguring at times. Um, hey, Lars. Uh, that may be important if you're uh, taking it into the field and doing stuff. That can be important. And I say mine. I've taken it on trips with me. Um, the impact mill and the RC46. You know, I can do it. Um, but depends on your application. You know, whatever works, works. Um, Somebody's still asking, what is your particle size, Brian? How fine are you grinding it? I mean, I got a high, an impact mill that's moving things pretty fast. It's literally blowing the ore out, and I'm getting concentration of gold behind the wear bars on the liner plates. I mean, I clearly see that I'm getting concentration there. Yeah. Again, those are the two philosophies. Do you make it easy to repair and easy and cheap to repair, or really tough? 80% minus 200 mesh. Well, that's pretty fine grind. What kind of rock do you have? And the other potentially negative of a 200 mesh grind is you're going to tend to make a lot of what they call slimes. Um, so these are materials that are so fine, they're hard to filter and hard to settle. That's basically all a slime is. Think of like silt or clays, anything like that where you just can't get it to settle or filter easily, and that can cause problems further down the line. Sometimes there's nothing you can do if you've got a high clay ore. Well, when you grind it, okay, fine grained quartz. Well, that's a pretty fine grind. If you got reasonable crystal lock, you may need it to grind it to that much. You might also see if you do some testing to see if you have to grind it that fine. You might be able to increase the throughput and not change your recovery too much if you don't need that fine a grind. From the sounds of things, it's probably a course that breaks up relatively easily. Um, like pages in a book. Yeah. Some of that is like up at top of the hill, the quartz is much easier to crush than at Montana B. Montana B has some tough stuff. Top of the hill so far, I haven't really seen anything that's that tough. Not the sort of thing that you whack it with a hammer and it goes ring. You know, Honey Bunny, you can also get that bladed material from what do you call it? A boiling water deposition zone. I hear. Not an expert, but that's what I hear. Um, but yeah, every rock's different. But if it's easy to crush, then there's. I would I would try, Brian, if you're satisfied with your recovery and everything, see what happens if you increase your throughput through the ball mill and do some testing on that. See what kind of recovery you get. You may not need to go to 200 mesh. That's industry standard sort of thing. That's a pretty fine grind. Usually about a 100 mesh is about where they usually grind to. Okay. And so that's okay. So you're trying to get it real fine so that you can roast it, huh? Okay. That's the one thing at least I don't have any problems with at this point, is I'm not having to deal with sulfides. Everything's thoroughly oxidized. But it's going to be really interesting to see what that stuff from the mystery dump comes back as from the you know bottle roll stuff and everything. We got some stuff over at Montana Bee, Honey Bunny, that it's got bugs in it, but it ain't soft. I mean, that looks superficially pretty soft. It's not. Okay, this is tougher than the stuff that we have from Top of the Hill. It's just weird that way. So we just, you know, look at each thing separately. But Top of the Hill definitely does crush easier. Access, some potentially advantageous stuff, depending upon exactly where it is. We have some patented claim up there, and that would be pretty easy to work. But the stuff that's on Forest Service land would be much more difficult to get permitted. So we'll have to see. Right now, I say I'm still wondering exactly what we're going to get out of this uh, uh, Top of the Hill stuff, leaching wise. So 3 ounce per ton silver, that's not bad. It doesn't, not near the money of your ½ ounce per ton gold. You're looking at basically $60 to $75 per ton silver and $1,000 a ton gold. So that can be a problem with silver depending upon what you have to do to get it out. You just have to get so much more. If you're like leaching and then doing, putting it on resin and things like that, that's going to be a little tough because you're going to load your resin real quick. On the other hand, if you are using like a zinc cementation or something like that, that might work just fine. Let's see, and that's a potential benefit too. If 75% of the gold is in the 10% magnetic portion, you may be able to do either a magnetic or a gravity separation first, and then just leach the concentrates. Again, everything is different, so you just gotta test all the different options you can think of that make sense. Hey, in the gold fields, which gold fields are you from? Is that Australia? Is that Western United States? Or whatever? All of them. Sweet. US. All right. Well, right now, hopefully you're in the southern gold fields, because the northern ones are kind of snowy right now. And the rock is, the dirt is really hard to dig right now. It has been cold up here. We get Um, I don't know. I think it has it even been above zero over the last 5 days.
No, I don't think
I
so.
don't think it's even got above zero. Um, Last I checked, it was about 15 below, and it's supposed to warm up over the next couple of days. But I mean, everything is just, the soil is just solidly frozen. And of course, the water and everything else. You couldn't do much. Okay, right now it says we're at minus 15. And tomorrow, ooh, we're going to get above zero. A high of 12 and a low of 7. Cloudy. Wednesday, a high of 14 and a low of 0. Snow. Thursday, high of 1, low of minus 10. Snow. Friday, high of 17, low of 11. And Saturday, 30 over 18. Sunday, 27 over 18. Monday, 27 over 18. Yep. Yeah, we're not going to see anything above freezing for the foreseeable future. You know, uh, what, a new property you're looking at in the Goldfields? I'm just going to call you Goldfields, okay? I agree with Honey Bunny. That's too many words. See, I told you, Brian. Lightweight, -8. Ha! I laugh upon you. Uh, so I say that's going to take some time before we can do a whole lot. That's why it's maintenance time here. That and I say design that crusher. That's going to take me several days. Not as much as it did the first one or the second one, because I've got a lot of stuff pretty well figured out. I'm just basically expanding one dimension on the chamber itself and going to like a 2-inch shaft, which means the bearings are a different size, which means everything changes a little bit there. Everything comes up a little. So, I say you got all these different things that all work together. I'm also going to design it for a little bit thicker liners and maybe thicker striker bars or something like that. I could go to a rectangular striker bar instead of a square one too, so it has to wear back further. Um, so there's a lot of little design parameters that I'll be working on, um, so it doesn't just copy paste sort of thing. But it's um, but it's just one of those things that it takes a lot of time. You got to go out there and like, okay, we're going to need a bigger engine. We're going to need a two groove pulley, two belts. We're going to a movable idler for a clutch. So that's another mechanism that's got to be in there. So there's just a lot of things that are involved in all this that takes time to design. Once I've got it designed, then whenever we need one, it'll be a piece of cake to put it together. It shouldn't take too much longer, if at all, than the one I did for Jimmy, which I think took us 3 days. Okay, not sure. Well, another thing too, Jeff, about the super cold is when the snow falls down, it doesn't just melt to the road. I mean, going out to Lauren's house, the best place out there was the freeway because the traffic just blows the snow right off the road. Well, thank you, Goldfields. Uh, do you have any questions or anything? Specifically, we got a lot of hard rock specialists here. Our placer specialist has been doing other things lately and everything. And but again, if you have any questions, please speak up. It really helps to drive the conversation. You know, yeah. We have a good little community here. Everyone likes helping out. So if you got a question or a situation, yeah, that's kind of an important criterion. Goldfields. Also, do you have a safety person with you when you're out in the field, or are you by yourself? It makes a big difference. Um, Eva's my usual safety person. She quite often wouldn't be able to rescue me, but she sure as heck could call for help. Um, and that's important. Also, if I was to do something and just get injured, but I'm not in a bad location, oh dear, Goldfield. I'm very lucky to have Eva. Um, she helps out with a lot of things, but also just being there as a safety person and such. She's got really good eyes. So there's quite often she sees things that I might miss. Um, and so it's very, very helpful. Yeah, but not nearly as fast as I can, David. That's why she does a lot of the exploration and sampling and things like that, because just sheer muscle mass is important to a lot of operations, whereas brains and eyeballs is important to a bunch of others. So, especially like at top of the hill, while I was moving muck, she was exploring things and testing things. Everything. We don't use fuses. Um, we were using the Sierra Blaster, which uses electric initiation. But I'm sure she could light a fuse.
Well, of course I could.
It's been a long time since I worried about. I never used fuses for initiation of explosives. Um, I have I've used electric initiation and non-electric shock tube initiation, non-L they call them, and both of those were for production blasting, and were a lot different from what I'm doing here. With it. What I'm doing here, the Sierra Blaster is used for small, hard pockets, and that is the limit to what we've been doing. I don't think we're going to have that problem at top of the hill. Top of the hill, the problem is going to be ground control, and but the mining part, in terms of digging, I don't think will be a problem. Ground control is likely to be a problem. So we'll have to see what happens as we get in a little deeper and see what the heck's going on. Uh, right now, we've got 2 or 3 tons of material stockpiled, ready for leaching once we, grind it. So we've got a lot of stuff we can do late next spring before we can get up into the mountains. You know, yeah. Just make sure you're using the right equipment to test those caps, honey bunny. You don't want to just use just any VOM to test a blasting cap. uh, but yeah, I say we've got a lot to do late spring. Once once the mill starts thawing out, we've got fair amount of ore to keep us busy doing testing and small production batches and this and that and the other. Yeah, we got plenty of fun stuff to do if the world holds together. We shall see what we shall see. Yeah, the Goldfields, I really like the Hilti demolition hammer. It can take on up to medium hard rocks, but the really hard quartz, granite, things like that, you'd almost have to have a blaster to do it. But if you don't, that Hilti can break a lot of rock in an hour if you got reasonable digging. I can bust up a couple 1,000 pounds an hour without too much trouble. So that's my major tool. That the Sierra Blaster is just what I have to use at times. Hey, Noble. Across the board, those people don't get it. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Noble. The first sounds good. The second sounds like a negative, and I'm not sure. Oh, okay, Pike Poke. Sulfides in quartz. Do we have any? I don't think we have any samples of sulfides in quartz.
No, we have not done any.
I know down in the I should go down to the what you call it, the beluga, get my little samples out, so I could show more. Okay, this is a gold ore, and this is all oxidized. But the red stuff here, you see, this is oxidized iron that used to be small particles of iron pyrite mixed with the quartz. This stuff here was almost completely iron pyrite. And the beluga, it's the trailer we have. It's big and it's white. A beluga is a white whale. So we just call it the beluga, but it's just a cargo trailer. See, this used to be mainly iron pyrite that's oxidized and weathered some. Here was iron pyrite and quartz and some dolomite limestone. And this is also thoroughly oxidized. I'm not actually mining anything that's got just a second. I may have a sample outside. Let me see. Watch me go out here in the 15 below zero in a t-shirt. Yeah, let's see. Try not to drip on the computer. This is a core that's relatively poorly oxidized. Let's see. Is it cold? uh, yeah, I've got some samples, but it's hard to tell. Now, there's sulfides in here too, but it's not the typical kind of green yellow of iron pyrite or the really bright yellow of chalcopyrite. Also has some sulfides in it, but to get a little more thorough answer to your thing, uh, the way that these quartz veins form is you have hot water basically under extreme pressure, extreme temperatures. Chris Ralph put out a good video this week on uh, let's see, what was that? It's not mesothermal, it's epithermal gold deposits. Okay. And very good description on how these things form. But basically, what happens is you have minerals dissolved in very, very hot water. And depending on the conditions, it can be pH, it can be chemistry, it can be temperature, it can be pressure. As the temperature and pressure and things change, these minerals can come out of solution. And typically more like 600 or 700 degrees Fahrenheit, honey bunny. But anyhow, three things that tend to come out of solution at the same temperature. If temperature is your big precipitating change as it gets cooler, which of course everything that comes to the surface is going to get cooler, three things come out at the same time: quartz, iron pyrite, and gold. All drop out of solution at almost exactly the same temperature. Therefore, what you will tend to get, if you have gold, you'll also likely have iron pyrite and quartz at the same time. Now, you can have quartz without iron pyrite or gold. You can have quartz and iron pyrite without gold. It's much more rare to find gold without the other two. A lot of times, what they call low sulfidation deposits, you're going to have mainly quartz and gold with not nearly as much pyrite. Something like this originally started as a high sulfidation ore. This was a lot of iron pyrite here. And this one here has a lot of copper in it. Again, this is a copper oxide. It's kind of hard to see with the light that way. But this is a copper oxide ore. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of hard to get the lighting just right. But anyhow, it's green. That's your copper. That's a pretty thing. So you start out with quartz, gold, iron pyrite to some extent. If it's an ore, it's generally going to have quartz and gold and a certain amount of pyrite. When the pyrite weathers, when it oxidizes, it turns to iron oxide, iron sulfide, or sulfate. And those are, that combination of minerals is called goethite. Just means what you get when you oxidize iron pyrite. But that would be vugs. Boy, your typing is almost as bad as mine, Goldfields. But anyhow, so that's where you get all the iron oxides from. The vugs are typically cubic because that's what iron pyrite is. Now, you can have iron oxide cubes in the vein rock. In that case, you would call that a pseudomorph because iron oxide doesn't form cubes. What you had was a cube of iron sulfide that formed iron oxide. So pseudomorph means it's got a false shape. Hey, blind dude. And that's because iron oxide should not be in the form of a cube. That's pretty definitive that that used to be iron sulfide. Okay. So you're going to tend to see vugs, pseudomorphs, and what they call boxworks. This is almost boxworks. It really isn't, but you can see that there used to be stuff there that's gone, leaving, you know, very narrow veins, veinlets looking like things. There we go. That's kind of boxworks right there. See where all the other stuff is kind of weathered out, leaving some residuals, you know, and that's, you know, something that, yeah, WORKS. Yeah, WORKS, Boxworks. And again, it's something you get when you oxidize out pyrites. Okay, and I'll try and remember to bring those samples because I got some trays, you know, like parts holder trays that actually have some pretty good samples in them that illustrate all these things. That would be pretty good. But that's why you're looking basically for iron stained quartz. In Arizona, you got a lot of iron stained rock above copper deposits or polymetallic deposits. Okay. What happened was you had solutions that came in through the rock and deposited stuff everywhere. And then it was oxidized, and the rain kind of leached it down some and pretty much leaves the iron oxide there. Iron oxide is not terribly mobile. It doesn't dissolve very easy, so it tends to get left behind. That's why they come up with these phrases like gold rides an iron horse or gold has an iron cap, something like that. Uh, Actually, the gold can be more mobile than the iron oxide. Absolutely, blind dude. I say if you go to Chris Ralph's channel, The Professional Prospector, he has a very good video this week on hydrothermal deposition, specifically what they call epithermal gold deposits. These are ones that are from hot water near the Earth's surface. The term mesothermal means deeper seated than that. Meso means in the middle. Epi means on the surface, your epidermis, you know. And it's all from hot water, just the pressures and temperatures involved and things like that. But yes, hot springs are good places to look. Not on the surface, though, because the gold will have left long before. We've got a hot springs right over here, Broadwater Hot Springs. It's what, mile and a half down the road, little one?
Yeah.
Yeah. They got, you know, the indoor pool and all this stuff. We haven't been there before. Okay. We haven't been there yet, but it would be kind of cool. And they have these sort of things around this area. We have lots of minerals in this area. Gold would generally, you might see traces of gold in the surface water that's coming out of a hot spring. That's going to be real low concentrations. Okay. Because it's going to tend to come out about a mile below the surface as it's cooling off. But it's generally not going to be much in the surface water. I was told the dirty quartz has the best chance for gold in our area. Every place is different. And it can change. The same vein can have different zones in it from different events. And you can have a mine right over there, 100 yards, that has different chemistry than the one you're at. On the other hand, you can have a whole mining district where everything is very similar. one of the complexities of hard rock gold mining is it's never simple. You know, the rule is it's always more complicated than you wish. But yeah, it if in your area the old timers found that dirty quartz is the thing to look for, whatever they call dirty quartz. Yep. Would you try with gray ground meeting red ground on a small mountainside 100 feet long? Yes, I would test it. Um, there's several ways of testing, but one of the cheapest and easiest is my hand panning technique. Have you seen my videos on hand panning for microfine gold? The gold tends to be really, really fine. In this rock here, 80% of the gold is 2000 mesh minus. No joke. The university actually did an electron microscope study on this. And so we can tell you 80% passing 6.8 microns. But anyhow, it's hard to get there. Take some samples when you're there. You can carry 20 pounds of rock in a backpack. Generally, better to have a few decent sized samples and a lot of real small ones, or one or two really big ones. Okay. The courthouse might have better records. Not sure about New Mexico, blind dude. You might find some interesting stuff at New Mexico Tech School of Mines. You can certainly call them up. But in Arizona, they have the Arizona Department of Mines and Mineral Resources. Montana has the Montana Bureau of Mines and Mineral Resources. That's where you would usually find those kind of records. And depending upon the jurisdiction, they can have some really good records where their inspectors would go out in the field on a regular basis and make field notes and things like that. Okay, Fox. There's two different kinds of good assayers. One is the big boys, and they are accurate as long as you don't have something really weird that just doesn't want to assay right. They're not going to. They don't do anything really special. They do what you ask them to, etc. And like in Tucson, you got ALS Global and Skyline Labs. I typically use somebody else, and the reason is I've tested him out. He seems to be pretty reliable, and the main thing is he's really fast. Okay, it's little more expensive than ALS Global or Skyline, but on the other hand, I can get results back in a week. Those guys, you're looking at typically 4 to 6 weeks or longer to get results. Oh, you're most welcome, Pikepoke. That's what we do here. Hazen Research, I've heard of them. I haven't heard anything about them, so I have no recommendations, pro or con. But a lot of times, the convenience is kind of the most important thing, whether it's speed or being able to take the samples to them and talk to them in person, things like that. It can make a big difference. But I say, you want somebody that works for the big boys. If you can get a good return time, you're going to tend to get a better price from a big lab like ALS Global. You're looking about $35 a sample, whereas Hittle is $45 a sample. So the problem is you're going to wait 6 weeks. With Skyline Labs, you got a $300 minimum. With ALS, last I checked, they didn't have a minimum. And I say, it's just, these are the sort of things where 3 weeks is norm. That's pretty good for a big company, Brian. If you can get a three-week turnaround as a small guy at a big company, that's good. Oh, really? 500 for Skyline. I'll try ALS Global if that's a convenient location. I heard last I checked, they were setting up a lab in Tucson that should be up and running by now. They've got one in Reno, stuff like that. They can also do a lot of other tests. For example, this rock here, I'd want to know what the hell else is in it besides gold. There's going to be a lot of other things. And that's a different test. That's a multi-element analysis. That gives you, that's a different test. Costs a little bit more, but you get like 50 elements, So it's not too bad. This rock must be cold. The snow is still frozen on it. So for me, that's why I like the hand panning. Speed, I can do it in the field at the time. Depending upon the situation, it can be reasonably reliable. Other times it's not. But if you're just trying to find what's interesting or not, and you're a small scale miner, it can be pretty useful at times. Again, the fact that you're doing it in the field in real time makes a huge difference if you can do it. When we were up at top of the hill, Eva was taking samples, I'm panning them. By the time she'd get a half a dozen samples, I'd been working for, a couple hours, and then I could hand pan the samples and get some kind of an idea what's what. It's not super reliable, but it seems to be relatively predictive. In other words, if I get more in the pan, there's more in an assay, that sort of thing. The difference between Montana B and top of the hill is big. It requires a completely different calibration. When you look at the pan, you say, this is this. And then, so that's why I use the term, when I write down the thing, is PFG, pannable fine gold. Okay. That's the thing. And that I've calibrated from Ryan's mine down there near Tucson. That's where I calibrated my eye. And so that's a relative term. It's not an absolute term. For that, you need to correlate it with various actual things. Let's see. For example, on this particular thing, where's the other piece of paper, damn it? Oh, Lord. There we go. Okay. One sample here. First sample was 0.01 to 0.03 pannable fine gold. The actual assay was 0.09. The next one was 0.01 to 0.02 pannable fine gold. Actual assay 0.03. The third sample, 0.1 plus pannable fine gold. The actual assay was 0.38. The next one was 0.05 to 0.1. The actual assay was 0.16. Next one, 0.03 to 0.05. Actual assay, 0.28. See what I'm saying? by getting that calibrated, you can use that in the field to get a really good idea of what's interesting and what's not, especially helpful if you're trying to visualize and say, okay, what does this material here do? What does that material do? And this and that and the other. So you can figure out what are you going to look for? What colors, what minerals, what is it that is associated with the gold? You're rarely going to see the gold itself. If you can see the gold in the rock, yeah, baby, that's some good stuff. Anyhow, I presume nobody just hasn't had a comment in a while. I haven't seen anything there. There we go. Okay. Broadwater Tap Room and Grill. I think
that's right
they
down the
have,
road.
that's at the Broadwater Hot Springs area. I mean, it's the same complex.
It's right out there.
Yep. I say it's probably the same people, but I don't know for sure.
It is.
Eva says it is. But anyhow, so I like what I call speed prospecting with hand panning because it can help you make decisions in the field as to what do I want to sample, what do I don't want to sample, what's interesting, what's not, blah, blah, blah. It really helps. It's also a hell of a lot cheaper. I can do a hand pan in 5 minutes at zero direct cost, and I could do it in the field. If I want to do the exact same thing, said I had 10 samples. There's 10 samples right there on that sheet. To take those samples and send them off for assay, even with HITL, that's going to be $450 and a week. Thank you, Mr. Lodak. Yeah, I'm not sure what the deal is. I made a comment on somebody else's video this week that got a couple responses. I made another comment on a video of that one channel that didn't get any responses and wasn't on the same subject or anything. So I suspect they probably just clicked the little don't show on this channel sort of thing. Which I don't respect if you're not being ridiculously provocative or rude. If you can't handle a simple question, you're not very confident in your position, in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Lodak. I mean, people who want to shut down debate, I really don't think are that confident of their position. That's just my personal opinion in general. Oh, it was just, I had commented that earlier in the day, a week or two ago, I forget when, I had commented on a video and I had taken a position. It's a fairly controversial position. There's lots of emotions on both sides of it. And I had asked a question basically saying, can you tell me what's the difference between situation A and situation B? Because the people who ran the channel, that seems about right, Mr. Luck. The people who ran the channel were commenting on situations which in many ways were quite similar, which they come to entirely different conclusions on, so to speak. And I wanted to be non-provocative as possible. And so I asked a question. Can you please explain what's the difference between organization A doing this, 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 and this, and getting this consequence from organization B, and organization C doing this, 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 and this, which are very similar in my opinion, and you have a different position on what organization D's response is than what you had with organization B. Radically different position. And then my comment disappeared and stuff like that. So I was just, Mr. Lodak and I were testing a few things and seemed to see if it was YouTube censoring me or whether it was the particular channel censoring me. And it seems to me it was a particular channel, which is their right. Okay. I don't have any argument against that. I mean, you should be able to. Oh yeah, there's some pyrite there. Oh yeah, Goldfields. You wanted to see what pyrite looks like? There you go. Let's see if we can get a little bit. There we go. That's what pyrite looks like in quartz. You know. So I say, Mr. Lodak and I were just testing to see whether it was YouTube or the persons who were running that channel, and it appears it was probably the people that were running that channel, and that's all that was about, you know. But as I of the opinion if a person is trying to be reasonable, you should at least be reasonable initially back. Now, things can get a bit heated, and especially if it doesn't directly apply to, gold mining or hard rock mining or whatever. If we go off on too much of a tangent for too long, I'll generally just kind of say, okay, everybody, let's just agree to disagree and see what history, renders the verdict on this one. And like that, because this is a mining channel primarily. Now you will see, have you been here before, Goldfields? I think you indicated earlier, this is like the first time you've seen the live stream. And so shortly, you are going to see my wife, which I love very much and is in the field stuff. She will don her tinfoil hat to give what we call the tinfoil hat report. She spends a lot of time on the internet. We do not have any significant zinc in the Montana B, or we do not know yet on the top of the hill or the mystery dump, Brian. So anyhow, she spends a lot of time on the internet, so she will give a report on mining issues, precious metals market, the general economic markets, and things like that. And sometimes after that, we kind of tend to go off on tangents. It's as much my fault as anything. But yeah, don't know, Brian. Haven't seen that happen yet. Okay. And most of the zinc you're going to find in real life is not it's not going to be zinc. It's going to be zinc oxide, zinc salt. It's going to be a zinc compound. And as such, it's generally going to be a lot less likely to precipitate the gold out of solution. I use about a 2-pound sample and a small pan. Do I have one here? No, it's out on the porch. I know I got them there. Oh, what I do for you folks out in the blizzard again. Is a 10-inch pan, actually. But a 2-pound sample in this is usually adequate because the gold found in hard rock tends to be so fine that if you're not getting anything in 2 pounds, you're probably not going to get anything. When you're talking placer, you need a much bigger sample to be reasonable. Okay. That's just one of those things that it's a function of the particle size. It's not, if you got smaller particle sizes, you're going to have more of them. Therefore, a smaller sample will work. Big samples, I mean, typically in like placer mining, they'll like to go with like a 1 cubic yard sample or more. These right here. Another thing, this bottom here, it just has an angle. It doesn't have a vertical wall. I found that interferes with my panning technique. I like the ridges here, the simple angle at the bottom, and the size is something I can easily just work with one hand. Yeah, Mr. Lodak, I'm usually, I see the thing. I'll try and remember to look it up there, jump on again next Sunday. Thanks for reminding me, because I've been there a couple times, and it would be good now that I haven't been there for a little bit to get back on. So anyone has hard rock questions, I could help out there. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But isn't yardage the same? If you had, when I say a 1 yard sample, I mean a ton of material is processed to see how much gold is in it. Okay. Because placer is so much easier to work in general, your costs are much lower per ton, so you can get by with much less gold per ton, which means that the total concentration of gold can be vastly lower. And if the gold is in larger particle sizes, you could be the sort of thing where you could make money with only 1 gold particle per cubic yard. I mean, if it was that big. Let's see. There we go. That gives you an idea. If you had 1 gold particle that size per cubic yard, that would be about break even. On the other hand, if you don't have 20 or 30 particles, in the 100 mesh range or something like that, with a 2-pound sample of hard rock, it's not going to be profitable in general. And so that's it. The costs in hard rock mining are going to be much higher, both the mining and the processing costs. So you need more gold, and it's going to tend to be smaller. So a much smaller sample will generally function. Can't you find more in the long run? It all depends. You can find some big that way from here, about 20 miles roughly, a place called Confederate Gulch, where they were getting ounces per pan. Okay. That sort of thing. So it's highly variable. You will also see me do my sign language interpretation here shortly for Eva. I'll be the comedy sidekick while she gives her presentation. And
yeah, that is one word for it. Yeah.
Well, that's what we try. Some people find it to be quite amusing. So don't expect it to make much sense. Just hope you get some laughs. Okay. Anyhow, I see the tinfoil hat showing up.
Hi, everybody. Hi, David. Hi, Goldfield. Hi, everybody. So we have another week where blessedly absolutely nothing happened in the news. Isn't it wonderful? Yeah. Hi, Shaggy. Hey. So we'll start with some mining news because it seems like the folks at First Quantum are having a problem again. For anybody who, well, let's put a little background context in here. Okay. First Quantum was bebopping along, being one of the largest copper mining concerns in the world down there in Panama. And then the Panamanian government got a little bit weird, and then a rente protest materialized, an environmental hoorah ensued, and they have now had to shut down their operations in Panama, which is going to be putting a not inconsiderable dent, like 3 to 5% in the world's copper supply. It's also putting a much larger dent in Panama's gross domestic product. Maybe they will be rethinking this sooner or later. But in the meantime, First Quantum to halt Ravensthorpe nickel mine. So first they had their copper problems, now they're having their nickel. Canadian miner First Quantum Minerals, which is reeling from the forced closure of its giant copper mine in Panama, will halt mining at Ravensthorpe nickel operation in Western Australia for 2 years. The company said it would continue to sell nickel from its stockpiles, but the decision would mean a 30% reduction of the operation's workforce, roughly 125 people. The stockpiles are estimated to last between 18 months and 2 years, after which mining will resume at the Hale-Bopp and Halley's ore bodies at Ravensthorpe, the company said in a statement. Oh, I love the fact they named them after comets. The goddess very much approves of comets. Just saying, you know. The move came after the mine lost 66 million with an M in the 9 months to September 30, and as nickel prices have continued to decline. The Ravensthorpe mine has always been viewed as a relatively high-cost operation and was previously suspended from 2017 to 2019. Last year, it produced about 30,000 tons of nickel with mixed hydroxide precipitate and close to 1,000 tons of cobalt. BMO analysts said the decision made sense in the current environment, as there is an oversupply of both metals and further supply cuts are necessary to balance markets this year. The announcement follows the closure of Panoramic Resources' Savannah nickel mine in the Kimberley region of Western Australia. The decision announced last week will eliminate 140 jobs. In 2021, First Quantum sold a 30% stake in Ravensthorpe mine for $240 million with an M to South Korea's POSCO, one of the world's largest steel producers. The Toronto-based miner retained a 70% stake in Ravensthorpe and continued to be the operator. Prices for nickel, traditionally used in steelmaking and increasingly in the manufacture of batteries, we'll get back to those batteries in a while here, have been hovering around 2-year lows, closing Friday at $16,240 per ton. The global nickel market recorded its 18th consecutive monthly surplus in October, according to the International Nickel Study Group, recording a cumulative surplus of 193,200 tons in the first 10 months of 2023. Fast Markets Analysis, meanwhile, have forecast the market to record a further annual surplus of 170,000 tons in 2024. The metal was the worst performer among the base metal complex on the London Exchange and the Shanghai Futures Exchange in 2023, losing more than 40% of its value in both markets. The goddess has to wonder. On one hand, we have the Great Green Agenda, which requires a whole hell of a lot of nickel and copper, like metric.
Shit tons.
Yeah, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Metric tons of said things. On the other hand, the prices are dropping like a rock on some of these things, and it's becoming uneconomical to mine them. The goddess assumes it's just one of the great mysteries of life. It's a quantum thing. Just saying, you know.
First quantum.
In this case, definitely. Uranium price jumps to 15-year high as top miner flags shortfall. There's a rumor out there that there's a squeeze going on in the physical uranium market. Sadly, the goddess can't go wandering down to her local coin shop to buy uranium. Oh well. We shall see. Uranium prices jumped on Friday to an almost 15-year high after the world's largest producer, Kazakhstan's Kazatomprom, warned it's likely to fall short of its output targets over the next 2 years. The miners cited shortages of sulfuric acid and construction delays at newly developed deposits as the main factors behind ongoing production challenges, which it said could persist into 2025. A detailed assessment of the potential impacts on output will be released in a trading update by February 1st. Despite the ongoing active search for alternative sources of sulfuric acid supply, current forecasts indicate the company may find it difficult to achieve 90% production levels compared to subsoil use contract levels, Kazatomprom said in the statement. Sulfuric acid is a favorite among producers to extract uranium from the raw ore due to low cost and efficiency for different types of ore. The Kazatomprom noted its guidance for next year could also be affected if supply snags continue through 2024 and if it isn't able to comply with scheduled construction work. The spot price of the radioactive metal has more than doubled in 2023 and is currently trading at $97.45 per pound, still far from triple-digit figures achieved in 2007 and the fallout after the 2011 Fukushima disaster in Japan. The price increase comes as 24 nations, including the United States, Japan, Canada, Britain, and France, pledged last month in Dubai at the 28th Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, known as COP28, to triple nuclear power capacity by 2050. The goddess must interject here. I absolutely believe that China will increase nuclear capacity. I'm fairly confident Japan will increase nuclear capacity. And France is already actively talking about doing it.
Not much, Rock.
If anybody has ever bothered to look at the regulatory capture that has occurred here in the United States, I'd say the goddess can fairly confidently predict it ain't gonna happen here very easily, if at all. Because the way regulatory capture has shut down any remote possibility of most things nuclear, yeah, good luck with that. The odds are somewhere between zero and you've got to be kidding me that we're going to get anything done realistically in the short term on this issue. China, which was not part of that promise, still leads global nuclear plant construction with plans to nearly double capacity to 100 gigawatts, that's GIGA watts, by the end of this decade. The Asian country has 22 of 58 plants being built worldwide. Recent legislation in the U.S. could also affect uranium prices even sooner than other factors, seeking to cut its reliance on Russia, which supplies more than one-fifth of its uranium. Congress passed a bill in December that would require the U.S. to source a portion of its nuclear fuel domestically. The bill called for 20 tons of HALEU, high-acidity, low-enriched uranium fuel, needed to run most advanced reactors in the country to come from domestic sources by the end of 2027, and it now awaits President Joe Biden's signature. Another aside here. Unless the goddess's memory fails her, which is highly unlikely, by the way, I seem to remember when a certain nasty old woman, former First Lady, was Secretary of State and arranged for foreign interests to buy a good deal of our uranium things in this country. Oh dear. Bank of America and Berenberg Bank said this week in separate research notes that continued tightness in the uranium market could push prices over $100 in coming days. I highly advise nobody take anything that B of A says with less than at least a truckload of salt. We all know that there are a bunch of criminals over at the B of A, but there's nothing new about that. Just saying. So let's see what's going on elsewhere here. We have covered some good mining news today. Let's see. Jobs. Yeah, I believe we might have covered that recently, but we'll give it another look here in a minute.
The FAA is hiring.
We'll talk about that later. The CPI lie. Price inflation is even worse than advertised. Well, no shit, Sherlock. We shall see what the guys over at Money Metal say about this one today. The CPI is a lie. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Price inflation is even worse than advertised. 2.7 times worse than advertised the last time I did the math for the household. Reminder, public service announcement, the only CPI that matters is your personal household CPI. So do keep good household accounts year over year. According to the December 2023 CPI report, price inflation was 3.4% on an annual basis. That doesn't seem too bad, but in reality, prices are rising far faster than data indicates. Here's the ugly truth. The CPI drives markets and motivates policy, but it's nothing but speculation, estimation, and wild guess. There are a number of problems with the CPI data spit out by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. Well, technically, there are a number of problems with all the data spit out by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, okay? The first is selection bias. The BLS calculates the CPI by analyzing the total price of a basket of goods. Obviously, the things the government chooses to put in that basket and the weight it assigns each category have a big impact on the final CPI number. Under the current formula, remember this is the new formula, okay? They updated it again. 10.9% of CPI is based on durable goods, computers, automobiles, appliances, etc. Non-durable goods, primarily energy and food costs, make up 26.6% of CPI. Services, including healthcare, rent, internet, and cell phone, etc., account for the remaining 62.5% of the basket. So why these particular divisions and percentages? Because the government number crunchers decided it should be that way. It's arbitrary. People who created the formula would almost certainly claim they based it on some kind of objective methodology. Well, it did. It's called the Mighty Magic 8 Ball plus fortune cookies. Trust me on this. They would make it sound sciencey, but when you boil it all down, the things in the formula are in the formula because a relatively small group of government folks decided that's the way it should be. I'm skeptical of this approach. You don't have to be a total cynic to recognize there's a lot of room for bias in creating or changing the formula. It's also reasonable to assume the government people are going to be biased toward making the government look as good as possible. Well, no shit, Sherlock. How the government fixed the CPI. According to the BLS, should be BS plus L. Periodic changes to the CPI are necessary because consumers change their preferences or new products and services emerge. During these occasions, the Bureau re-examines the CPI item structure, which is the classification scheme of the CPI market basket. The item structure is a central feature of the CPI program, and many CPI processes depend on it. Spoiler alert for those who don't speak government. Whenever anything is a central feature of a program, like CPI, that involves feeding a statistic to the American people, that means it's utterly and completely useless bullshit. If anybody in the real world did it that was not government, you'd be in jail for fraud. So that is the meaning of central feature in this case, okay? And many CPI processes depend on it because these central features designed to defraud and lie to the public are used to build the rest of the lies that are fed to us by other government agencies, okay? The BLS is constantly tinkering with the CPI formulation. But in 1998, it made wholesale changes to the calculation because the powers that be decided the data was overstating inflation. The Bureau of Labor Statistics called the changes sweeping. Translation: when the government says sweeping, they mean massive cover up and book cooking. Okay? In reformulating the CPI, the BLS followed the recommendations of the Bosking Commission, a committee appointed by the Senate 3 years earlier. The committee was originally called the Advisory Commission to Study the Consumer Price Index, and its job was to ferret out possible bias in the computation of the CPI. You'll be shocked to learn this government commission discovered bias that was making the government look bad. Really. I'm shocked. Shocked. Absolutely. I'm gobsmacked. I am gabberflasted, even. Ultimately, the Bosking Commission determined the Consumer Price Index overstated inflation by about 1.1% per year in 1996 and about 1.3% prior to 1996. Based on these conclusions, the BLS went about making changes to CPI to address this issue by ensuring the formula consistently spit out smaller numbers. Spoiler alert, go to Shadow Stats website. You'll see things calculated by the old formula. Do not do this unless you are sitting down, and I strongly suggest if you partake in substances to ease the pain, like strong alcohol or mind-altering drugs, you have them handy after you've digested what is seen on that website, okay? Simply put, a congressional committee had a vested interest in making people think inflation isn't that bad arbitrarily, and decided the index to measure inflation was overstating the problem of rising prices. To be even more blunt, the government cooked the books. If you run today's price data through the old CPI formula, you'll find the increase in prices is nearly double the government's reports. So, when the Bureau of Labor and Statistics reported a 3.4% CPI in December, it was closer to 6.8% when calculated using the 1970s formula.
Oh, by the way, the 70s formula was also modified.
Yes, the 70s formula was modified in the 1980s to make things look better. So again, go to shadowstats.com to find out what's really going on in that regard. There is every reason to believe the 1970s formula wasn't particularly accurate either. Spoiler alert, it became inaccurate, coincidentally, in 1971. Right around the time that one Richard Milhouse Nixon took us off the gold standard, and we had already lost the silver standard, which is when the deviation occurred. The deviation began to be something that could actually be tracked in that wonderful period from 1965 to 1969, when the only silver left in our money was 40% Kennedy half dollars, which, by the way, at the present time in most parts of the country, you can find for melt value or less. And yeah, while you cannot melt US money because it's illegal, that's the best buy in silver. Those 40% Kennedys that everybody hates. Just saying. The BLS builds in all kinds of geometric weighting, substitutions, and hedonics into the calculation. By manipulating numbers in the formula, the government can create an index that outputs whatever it wants. The recent understatement in the increase of health insurance costs reveals just how badly CPI fails in the accuracy department. Yeah, this is a good example right here. In October 2023, the BLS adjusted the health insurance CPI formula. With that change, CPI showed a 1.1% increase in health insurance costs during that month. It's a significant jump, but it wouldn't surprise anybody who's priced health insurance recently. Why did they make this adjustment? As it turns out, the old formula showed a 37% collapse in the cost of health insurance between September 2022 and September 2023. Through those 12 months, health insurance costs fell an average of 4% every single month. according to the CPI, which dropped health insurance CPI to 2018 levels. Clearly, this did not correlate with reality. Why am I not surprised? No sane person believes the cost of health insurance dropped 37% in 1 year. With health insurance costs supposedly declining when it wasn't, monthly CPI and core CPI were significantly understated for 12 straight months. And the annual numbers will carry this distortion forward for the next year. Bad data begets bad data. But don't fret, the BLS fixed the problem with the adjustments. Between October 23 and October 2024, the CPS cost of health insurance will rise incrementally. The goddess should note at this point, all over various parts of social media, people are discussing the fact that when the year rolled over and the window closed on getting your health insurance type things, yeah, a whole lot of people are seeing 50% increases in premiums, 60% increases in premiums, double premiums, triple premiums for the part they pay. Never mind what their employer pays, okay? That's where we really are there. As Wolf Street puts it, the BLS turned the health insurance CPI into chicken shit. This ignominious fiasco of an important metric within CPI data occurred because the model the BLS used to estimate health insurance CPI, the retained earnings method, after working reasonably well for years, blew up amid distortions in money flows during the pandemic. Rather than coming up with an alternative estimate right away back in 21, when these issues became apparent, the BLS let this fiasco run for 2 years, overestimating by a moderate amount health insurance inflation in 2022 and causing health insurance CPI to collapse over the past 12 months. And that was just a tweak. The BLS didn't rework the formula. It continues to use the same retained earnings method that blew up back in 2020. Yeah, this is going to go real well. So why would the government do this? Why would it want to underestimate rising prices? Why did it reformulate CPI in the 1990s to make inflation look milder? Because inflation is a tax on working people. As a matter of fact, inflation is a tax on everyone. It is the largest tax in history, okay? Get that through your head if you haven't already. Inflation is a tax. It is a way to legally steal your ability to accumulate wealth. Okay? Right there. Politicians would prefer to keep you in the dark about just how quickly they're picking your pocket. The government wants to hide the true extent of the inflation it creates by borrowing, spending, and printing money. And no, they're not borrowing, spending, and printing money. They are borrowing, spending, and printing currency. All money is currency, but not all currency is money. Okay? What better way to do that than by trumpeting bad data month after month? The CPI is what it is.
What's
it's
the
only
difference,
data
Noble?
we got. But anytime you hear it mentioned, you should just understand price inflation is even worse than they're telling you and act accordingly. And yes, Noble. Okay? Inflation is true theft. Taxation quite frequently is theft. Not all taxation, well, at the root of it, all taxation, unless absolutely voluntary, is indeed theft. However, people argue about that one till the cows come home. Okay? As to acting accordingly, the way to act accordingly, now that we are in the brand new year, it is time for the goddess's lecture on income taxes and keeping good household records. You act accordingly. Yeah, go ahead. Fall asleep back there, you yo-yo. I'm the one that runs the books around here. He never has to do any paperwork. Okay? The way to act accordingly is always keep a close eye on what you spend and what you spend it on. You keep household accounts. This can be as simple as recording all of your purchases in whatever form they're in a checkbook register and balancing your checkbook, or collecting receipts and keeping a nice, more detailed account of where your money is going. Not just how much you have, but where your money is going. The other thing that should be done at this time of the year regards the issue of taxation. I'm going to posit something to you that I was discussing online recently on Reddit. Because people on Reddit are like, well, I'm looking forward to that $5,000 rebate I'm getting. I'm getting back $4,000 from the IRS, but oh my God, according to the chart, I won't be getting it back until March. What am I going to do? So somebody was like, well, people keep telling me I shouldn't be getting a rebate. Why not? All right. So let's answer why not here. Would you loan a total stranger a percentage of your paycheck, every single paycheck, with no questions asked, regardless of how poor their record has been to date when it comes to spending money wisely, without interest, an interest-free loan every damn paycheck, on the promise that according to this piece of paper they just put out this month, you're going to get that money back within a certain time frame if you e-file, and within a slightly longer time frame if you send them in your paperwork on paper and they have to send you a check. Well, let's see. If you're the kind of person that will loan a total stranger that don't know how to budget and is consistently borrowing from everybody on the goddamn planet and paying them interest, and wants to borrow from you without paying you interest, a portion of every single paycheck, well, you know, at the end of every single one of our videos, there's a PayPal address. You can send your donations there. Works fine for me. This is the point here. There is no earthly excuse for anybody who is not getting tax credits to ever get a tax refund. No. You don't let some yo-yo who does not spend money wisely borrow your money interest-free while they pay everybody else in the world interest to borrow their money so they can keep spending like drunken sailors on leave somewhere. Okay? Not a bright idea. Especially now when we have this inflationary cycle getting worse by the week, and we have the spiral into oblivion getting worse by the week. This is the time when you need to adjust your withholdings. If you are a W-2 employee, you can adjust your withholdings as many times as you want. Your employer cannot deny you the right to adjust your withholdings. Now, that said, this is the first of the year. This is the time when you file your new W-4 and you set it for the minimum withholding. Okay? You set it for what would normally give you a refund. Every quarter, you go to the IRS website and you use the IRS tax calculator that is free. And you put in the information about how much they've taken out so far and how much you have left to pay of your obligation. And you file a new W-4 and you adjust your holdings accordingly. Or you can do it the other way around. You can have minimum taken out at the beginning of the year, maximum at the end of the year, doesn't matter. The point is, by the time you hit quarter 3, you should be at the point where the last quarter of the year, you're paying the last of your tax obligation for the year, such that you either get back less than $100 or you're paying in around $100. That way, all of the money that you can have at your disposal during the course of the year is in your pocket where it belongs. Because I can 100% guarantee to you, even the stupidest person on the planet, even the most clueless person on this live stream, is going to spend that money more responsibly than our feral government. Our feral government is incapable of doing anything responsibly at this point. All y'all know how the goddess feels about the feral government, okay? But those are the two things that one concentrates on in the first quarter of the year. New year, clean slate, start keeping household accounts so that next January you can look back when you start your second year and you can say, okay, well, our CPI shows the largest increases in our volatile food and energy sector. So what can we do to get that increase under control? That's how you know how to make changes, is by knowing where you are in the first place. And don't overpay your freaking taxes. 90% of the reason these people are still able to borrow as much money from the rest of the people in the world at the interest rates that they can do it at, which are ridiculously low considering their level of fiscal irresponsibility, is because they get so many overpayments every single paycheck from every single American who pays into this system. Because over the years of miseducation, and it was entirely deliberate miseducation, they have taught the American people that your income tax refund is kind of like a Christmas club thing, only you don't get paid interest. Okay? The system was originally meant to be such that you would not be getting a refund. You would either have paid exactly what you owe, or you would owe money. That was before all this other crap happened, okay? The same people that have been miseducating Americans on the nature of money in the first place since 1913 or so have been miseducating Americans on the nature of taxation since 1913 or so. It is time to stage a legal tax revolt. As in, don't overpay your freaking taxes. Pay exactly what you owe. That is what all good people do, so that you can take your money, you can pay down your debt, you can stock your pantry, you can buy silver and gold, you can invest in the stock market after it crashes into oblivion, and you can buy all the good stuff at yard sale prices. Or you can invest in the stock market and ride it to the top and hopefully cash out before it crashes into oblivion. Either way, your money belongs in your pocket. Your money does not belong in Mordor on the Potomac. Ever. Period. End of story in that regard. Ridiculous. But that is where we are on that issue. Okay? You've all seen that number that we put on the board back there. And what happened to that number in the last week, Professor Hard Rock? Where did we go before the start of this thing?
Well, we started out tonight at 34 trillion, 38 billion, 409 million.
And we went up to 593 about the time I started. Between last week and this week, we added $19 billion with a B. Hello. So the upward trajectory is increasing, sadly. Anybody who wants to try to dig up the figures, you can go to Fred. Fred is the Federal Reserve St. Louis. That's where they store all the statistics that they memory hold. It's getting harder and harder to find things there, but some of them are still there. Meanwhile, gold closed at like $2,048, silver at $23.12, platinum at $910, palladium at $952, and rhodium at $4,250. Went up exactly $100. As usual, rhodium is so nice and predictable that way. So that's where we are today in that regard. And a lot of people are reporting across the country that while stocks are relatively low at various local coin shops, premiums are also dropping. Premiums are dropping online too. Some of the trusted bullion dealers, like Money Metals and SD Bullion, websites like that, have had American Silver Eagles as low as $3.99 per coin over spot. No minimum, no limit. It should also be noted that Costco is now selling American Silver Eagles by the tube, and their premium is under $3 per coin spot. Limit 2 tubes, and you have to be a Costco member. Their gold is still running just a couple of percent over spot, lowest premiums anywhere in the country, and there is a limit on the number of gold bars you can buy. But they are very happy with their experiment that they have embarked on in selling precious metals on the Costco website. The next lowest prices you'll find in terms of metals on the internet are at Walmart.com, of all places. Once again, the key to shopping at Walmart.com for your gold or silver is only buy the stuff that ships direct from AppMex. Okay? It's cheaper than on the AppMex website. And if you buy it through the Walmart.com website, not only are you not paying a 3% fee for your credit cards, but if you happen to use the Walmart One card or one of the other Walmart programs, you can actually get cash back too. So you can save a fairly good little chunk of change on buying your bulk silver and a little bit of gold from AppMex through the Walmart.com. It actually is working out well for a lot of people. They ship quick too. So there is that to be said. There's a whole lot of interesting things on Zero Hedge that we absolutely can't get into on YouTube. Nothing unusual about that at all. We all know this, okay? And it should be noted that in this week where absolutely nothing happened in the news, it is simply a spurious rumor and totally confirmed, but still a spurious rumor that after we missile drone striked or whatever, a bunch of Houthis here last week, they went and hit another U.S. boat in the Red Sea this week. And apparently, Iran is now lobbing a bunch of missiles at the part of Iraq that we happen to be sitting in for some bizarre and unaccountable reason. So things are getting a little weird in the Middle East.
Minus 17 Fahrenheit, Roberts.
Yeah. Lovely balmy day here. What would that be in Kelvin?
Oh.
Well, I'm betting it's a lot higher in Kelvin, and we all know that the bigger the number, the hotter it is. So that's perfectly fine. Just saying. We are in a really weird year here, okay? This is not going to be your normal everyday year here because we are once again in an election year. It should be noted that Iowa is having a caucus today. There may actually be results by now. It should also be noted that all over social media, there was a concerted campaign by a certain political party where they decided they were going to go wandering off to the Iowa caucuses and re-register as the opposite party for the day so they could deliberately screw things up, which happens not to be against the law, but that doesn't mean it ain't a dirty trick. Just saying. There's going to be a whole lot more dirty tricks this election cycle because you may have heard something that you probably did not possibly believe was true about Arizona. That is absolutely true, and the goddess can confirm it because she double checked this. Yeah. In Arizona, you need to show that you are a citizen in order to vote in the state elections, which is great. It's absolutely the way it's supposed to be. On the other hand, you can request the paperwork to vote in the federal elections only without showing proof of citizenship. In fact, there's really not all that much need to show proof of any kind that is absolutely reliable down there. This does not surprise the goddess because, as anybody who's been watching for a while knows, 3 separate election cycles I had my vote stolen in Arizona, so I am very familiar with just how crooked Arizona is. This is not going to be the last we see of such shenanigans. Since it's an election year, we can expect just about anything to happen. Just saying in that regard. And the goddess firmly believes that this needs to be changed, but it must be changed constitutionally through the state legislatures, the way it's supposed to be changed in the first place. Unfortunately, both parties have a vested interest in making sure that election integrity is something that does not exist. They both benefit because they're both the same party, effectively speaking. It should also be noted that if you happen to be missing various body parts, partially paralyzed, fully paralyzed, and epileptic, have a severe psychiatric disorder, a severe intellectual disability, or you're a dwarf, the FAA wants to hire you. Lovely. That is very, very good of them to deliberately target their hiring practices to ensure that all of these people that fit in these particular categories, whether you're blind or deaf, missing a limb or limbs, partially paralyzed, fully paralyzed, intellectually disabled severely, or have a psychiatric disability, or you're a dwarf, the FAA wants you.
What they got against dwarfs?
I don't know. I don't know why they class dwarfs in with everybody else. It's not a disability. But apparently, according to the FAA, it is. So that's just the way that works, I guess. But yeah, that came out this week, and the goddess found that a little bit bizarre. This whole diversity, equity, and inclusion thing, we need to rearrange this acronym. It shouldn't say DEI, it should say DIE, because like it's beginning to get a little bit sketchy. Just a little bit sketchy. And King Arthur Flour has a baking contest going on right now for BIPOC individuals only, which is cool, because there's not enough inclusion in the baking world. The baking world is not inclusive enough. So just so you know, if you happen to be a BIPOC and you happen to like to bake, you might want to head over to the King Arthur website and see how you can get in on the baking contest. And apparently a female Air Force fighter pilot won the Miss USA, and she's actually a biological woman.
She looks like it.
Or she at least looks like a biological woman, which is kind of cool considering the number of dudes in dresses pretending to be women that are winning beauty contests around the world and now going to go participate in the latest Miss Universe contest. Funny enough, there are actually chicks online that are beginning to realize that they're being erased by dudes. It's really rather hilarious. Just saying, I'm sure you can, honey bunny. But yeah, that's the way that went, Oh, and honey bunny, speaking of racism, that prosecutor down there in Georgia, the one that was paying the big bucks to her married lover who then got divorced to become the special prosecutor or whatever job she gave him, and they were going to the White House to get instructions from Lord Malarkey. She's claiming that anybody who says that this is a little bit sketchy is being a racist. And on the same note, some illegal immigrant that murdered somebody a couple of years ago is also claiming racism in the way he has been treated as a murderer. So that's just a thing. That works in every instance. Well, almost every instance. It depends on where you are in the intersectional hierarchy as to how well this works. But yeah, that's where we are there. Meanwhile, gold and silver are still on sale, which is absolutely unbelievable. So there's a great time to run on down to your local coin shop. And also, egg prices are looking a little bit odd lately. Walmart is on the rise again per case of eggs. The restaurant supply stores are also on the rise again per case of large eggs. But for whatever reason, the company that supplies Safeway stores, the Safeway family with their cases, must have lucked out on a cheap egg supply because recently the prices of eggs have been on sale for ridiculously good prices at your Safeway family of stores, which would be Safeway, Albertsons, I believe it's BJ's or AJ's, and Super One Foods. So yeah, you can get some great egg prices. Mm-hmm. But that's where we are this week. When you see good food deals, stock up on good food deals because it does help with your personal household CPI to get things at the lowest prevailing prices. Be sure to check your tax status because there's no reason to be loaning money to idiots that don't know how to spend it, especially if they're not paying you a really good interest rate. Just saying. Pick up your gold and silver and physical gold and silver. What is a good price for eggs? Um, right now, Jeff, I back up the truck on large eggs when I can get them for under 12 cents an egg. Okay. 12 cents an egg is a really good, is a super good price for large eggs right now. Nationwide, I think large are averaging around 15 to 16 cents an egg. We buy them by the case, which is 5 dozen eggs. So that they do, Rock Butcher. That is why I only shop the loss leaders at Safeway stores.
Yep.
Because they will gouge you on just about everything else. Even their gas is more expensive, even with their grocery card. Okay. But when you find good buys on food, stock up. Learn to meal plan for around the lower things because we're ramping into a new part of this inflationary spiral now. Those numbers back there, along with the drastic rise in the number of people defaulting on credit cards, drastic rise in the number of people defaulting on car loans, drastic rise in the number of people flat out not paying their student loans, and drastic rise in the number of people frantically trying to readjust their mortgages to avoid foreclosure means we're getting into a rather dicey part of our economy now. This is the time when you need to be consolidating your shit, making sure that you can keep as much of your money in your possession as possible, which means budgeting things well, cutting the amount of money that you pay the government down to only what you are legally obligated to give them, paying down your debt. I mean, that's what you do. Rock Butcher, I just paid $7.58 for 60 eggs. Okay. And yeah, I can find large eggs down here for $1.40 for a dozen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Here in town, we paid the $7.58 for the 5 dozen case over at Super One, which is Safeway family. It's a Safeway family store.
We were shocked.
The other, it is close to the higher end of the lower end of the prevailing price at Walmart when Walmart shifts their contracts. The price at Walmart will vary about every 3 or 4 weeks. You'll see it shift, and it'll either go up a few bucks or down a few bucks. But yeah. That does not surprise me, Rock Butcher. All of your prices in Canada are through the roof on groceries. My Canadian friends envy me down in Montana. As a matter of fact, some of my Canadian friends who live close to our border go shopping in Montana. The same thing happens with my Canadian friends who live in British Columbia. They do their shopping in Washington State because there are some foods that you can bring back over the border in small quantities. So they do that a lot. But that is something that happens. But this is the time of year when one consolidates, and right now is a great time to start getting as much of your money back in your life as humanly possible, which means spending it wiser, making sure that the government doesn't get their filthy little paws on it any sooner than they have to, or any more than they have to, and stocking up on your precious metals and food. Because, frankly, with the way food prices soared in this country in the last year, a lot of people were realizing an 18% return on investment on their pantries. Okay? Right now, your long term pantry is probably a better investment than the freaking stock market. This is just something to keep in mind here. Yeah. Well, what are you calling expensive meat, Rock Butcher? I mean, I can get hamburger for $2.75 a pound for
When
good
it's on
hamburger.
sale.
Yep, regional meat too. And we today I could have gotten if we needed a pork loin for $1.69 a pound. Average where we are is $1.89, $1.99 a pound for pork loin. Various um, boneless pork products and chicken leg quarters are still 78 cents a pound at Walmart in the 10-pound bags. So yeah, now is the time to end the money. Exactly. But it takes some time, Shaggy. Anyway, that's where we are this week. So as always, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Bye bye.
Rock says that's Canadian prices when accounting for the exchange rate, Eva. Yeah, especially now when the heck is that?
Yeah, because I
Okay.
talked to a lot of Canadians who say their meat is a lot more expensive than ours. Maybe what they're buying too.
We are selective in where we buy and when we buy. We tend to buy at let's say the reasonably priced stores on sale, or like Super One occasionally has really good specials.
Like the time we got that bacon for $2.50 a pound.
Yeah, we about a month ago we got bacon for $2.50 a pound, sliced bacon. And say when we were over there, we were just looking for something in particular that we thought they might have, and ran into 5 dozen eggs for $7.50. Basically, it's like wow. About the cheapest we've seen it before that was around $10 at Walmart for that.
Whereas this time last year at Walmart, a case of large eggs was under $7. Today it was $13.57.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Eva says that last year it was about
Last
$7
year, the lowest
for
price
5
we get
dozen.
at Walmart was $6.57 a case.
Okay. I don't remember, but yeah. Anyhow.
I do. That's my job.
Because I'm retired and it's wintertime, we have lots of time to go shopping. I mean, we'll go out shopping just to kill some time, basically. With that van that Lauren let us have, it's fairly inexpensive and reasonably controllable when the roads are, just covered with cold snow. There'll be times when it's, starts melting and then refreezing, where it's like, ow. How long does it take the two of you to eat 60 eggs, Keith?
3 eggs a day per each of us. It takes 10 days.
Eva says 10 days. She should know. She's pretty good at this stuff.
14 days if I skip eating eggs daily.
Yeah. When they get expensive, Eva tends to avoid them because she says more important for my pea brain. Hers is still sharp. But
Yeah.
anyhow.
Eggs are a brain food.
Yeah.
Since you won't eat fish, you need eggs.
And so this time of year where it's cold outside, we see something at a ridiculously cheap price. We were over at Costco, and they had, what was it, the pork loin for, what was it, $8 off a package? Something like that. I think it was $8 off a package.
It was $8 off per package, and it was $1.99 a pound to begin with.
How's my cholesterol levels? They're decent. What?
His lipid panels are perfect.
She says they're perfect. She's the beneficiary of my life insurance policy. Why should we doubt her?
Spoiler alert. Dietary cholesterol has very little to do with your serum blood cholesterol levels. His lipid panels and mine are both totally normal.
Now, normal or
right where they need
optimal.
to be in the range.
Optimal, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because normal's not necessarily optimal.
Mine is normal, yours is optimal, but I tend to carry more inflammation than you anyway.
Yeah.
That's what's the problem there.
But if we were buying the same stuff every week, then we might have a problem keeping it as cheap as we do. Because we can afford to avoid something for 2 or 3 weeks, and then it's on sale and wham, Correct, honey bunny. But so that really helps out in terms of the cost. We got 3 pork loins sitting out in an ice chest on the front porch. It's doing just fine. We got a 5-pound chub of hamburger sitting on the front porch in an ice chest, doing just fine. We got 3 or 4 packages of low-carb tortillas sitting in an ice chest on the front porch, doing just fine. So that helps out a lot. But we have the time to shop carefully. I say, we can just go to different stores. If we see something, it's like, wow, that's great. Let's just grab it. So that helps out. And everyone cannot do that. If you've got, children and one or both of the parents are working, you won't have the time to shop like we do. And so it becomes a little more challenging. But we're doing fine. Pretty much, honey bunny. Absolutely. That, or as it warms up sometimes to keep it frozen during the middle of the day. But yeah, I say, right now, it's just hard frozen, period. And we just bring stuff in the day before to let it thaw out. What you saw me eating earlier was some lamb that we got free. It was kind of some surplus stuff. And we cooked it up with seasoning and stuff. And then that was like a gyro without the bread. Again, low carb. We got lamb meat, tzatziki, and cabbage. And I didn't even have feta cheese on it. So the calories were reasonable. I've gained at least 5 pounds since the end of the mining season. I'm back up around 200-ish, whereas I was down to 194?
Yeah.
Something like that. I'm lucky my body just doesn't naturally vary very much, but I'm trying to cut back on calories right now. It's, as that FAA thing showed, it's getting pretty crazy out there. Who knows what's going to happen? So save money where you can, be as healthy as you can. Well, you must do a lot of water gain and loss then, honey bunny. That's the only way you can lose that kind of weight. I mean, vary that much is water. But man, you're your body isn't real good at maintaining a consistent hydration then. Wow. So anyhow, that's it. Goldfields, are you still there? If so, what did you think of the sign language? And does anyone else have any um, uh, mining questions or anything like that? Well, that's not good, honey bunny. Says she's got congestive heart failure. So yeah, that's not good. Um, maybe I can get Jim to get back over here on a regular basis. He seems to be getting more healthy. Hey, Jean-Francois, you are. My goodness, it's what, 11 o'clock? Fox Mulder says try hawthorn extract. I think that was for Honey Bunny.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10:30 at night, his place. Business must go on. Only if you want to eat. Oh. No, that I must admit it was, even with all the craziness, I was shocked at the FAA thing. That was pretty ridiculous. And it's not like Eva was exaggerating.
That was basically the list.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually got the text here. Just a second. Let me just call one up just so I can print to something. This is a quote from the FAA thing. The FAA meets the goals of the PWD program through a variety of practices. Targeted disabilities. Targeted disabilities are the disabilities the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruiting and hiring. Now, remind you, this is the FAA, the people that run the air traffic control system. What they're looking for is people who have hearing loss, vision loss, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism. Now, I'm not so sure, but I don't think I want a blind, deaf, intellectually disabled air traffic controller controlling my plane. Call me an elitist here.
What kind of support roles would those people have?
Yeah, I mean, so that's just insane. Did you hear what I just read, Jean-Francois? Okay, Jean-Francois. The FAA put out a thing where they were specifically trying to recruit people who meet certain disability qualifications to increase diversity. Quote, targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruiting and hiring. They include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism. Now, this is what the Federal Aviation Administration is looking for. Holy Toledo, huh? Really? The feed stopped again when I said vision. Whoa, let's try that again, just for jollies. Okay, let's try again. They include. Okay, let's try this again for jollies. They include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism. Is everyone else hearing that? There's other people seeing their feed drop. Yeah, and severe psychiatric disability. I agree. Hilti makes great tools. Oh, and we wonder. Okay, you heard it. Okay. No, they want blind, deaf schizophrenics.
Who are dwarfs?
Yeah, now, and I personally think that thing with the dwarf thing, that's just rude. Because the others are disabilities. Dwarfism, you're just small. You know? I mean, oh my goodness. Uh, exactly. You know? I say that's crazy lumping them in with that. Oh. Oh, and I was watching Dr. John Campbell today. He was talking to another doctor whose specialty was vitamin D. Uh, what do you want, Jean Francois? Ask a question. We shall answer. Um, but he was talking to this guy, and basically, the one today was on vitamin D. And I have seen studies a while back. I mean, this was in the first year of the pandemic, where basically they found that if your vitamin D serum levels were above a particular point, your chances of death from COVID were essentially zero. And it was a dose response, linear sort of progression. And so the idea that vitamin D was important to, fight off COVID was certainly nothing new nor um, nothing unusual. I mean, vitamin D plays an important role in the immune system. So he said, you know, who has trouble making enough vitamin D? Old people and uh, like me, because we just don't make as much vitamin D for the UV exposure. Fat people, because square cube ratio and the fat ratio, the vitamin D tends to go to the fat so that they don't get as much. And dark skinned people, because of course their pigment is there to protect them from UV, to prevent skin cancer in real tropical environments, which is why us people from temperate and cold environments don't have the dark skin, because we need that ultraviolet for vitamin D. You know? And so it's one of those things where, because they kind of suppressed that information, it probably had a very harmful effect on dark skinned people. Well, maybe you, Jean Francois. I just go for the moderately violated, you know? Yeah, we talked today about something. We had a new guy on. I forget the first thing. I think it's In the Goldfields or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he was a newbie, so we were talking about some of the rocks and this and that and the other. And Chris Ralph had a good video this week on epithermal gold deposits. It was pretty thorough and pretty well done. And here was, one of the rocks we showed the guy. I don't know if we can see it too well here, but I mean that's pyrite there. Well, that'd be great, Jean Francois. What part of Africa did he live in? Jean-Francois says he's got a friend that's setting him up with a geophysicist who lived in for 40 years in Africa.
That's cool.
Friggin' feed stops every minute again. That sucks. Perhaps it would be good for you to log off and log back on again, Jean-Francois, because I haven't seen much problem from anyone else. Swiftwater has some good videos on dryland dredging, says Jeff. I must admit I've been less diligent in my researches and stuff than I should. I've been a little more focused on the geopolitical situation and geoeconomic situation. Plus, say this last week, it's been really cold here. So getting ready for that. And then I help sweep the sidewalks here at the motel. And I'm kind of the maintenance guy. So I was checking the vacant rooms to make sure the heat's on, checking water to make sure nothing is frozen up. And then yesterday morning, I'd had breakfast and was sitting here on the computer and the power went down. And hey, Constantine. Yeah, it's pretty good. Glad to see you here again. So it was 25 below outside and the power went out. Now, this particular room, it's all electric heating. The motel room it's a rather strange thing. Every room is somewhat unique. And some have some gas heating, some use central hot water heating with distribution, which requires power to distribute it, things like that. So with the power out to the building, we had a potentially very serious situation because once it gets cold enough, then the pipes start freezing and life becomes extremely difficult.
Oh my God.
So anyhow, that's why you see that picture of Eva in her onesie, is because once the power went out, she felt it was a good idea to get dressed kind of warmly before it got cold in here.
Somebody's displaying bumper stickers they saw on a car in New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
One says Biden wasn't elected, he was installed like a toilet. And the other one says, all lives splatter. No one cares about your protest.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to actually watch a Mount Baker table work in person, because it has a little bit different design than some others with that like kind of washing zone at the end of the table and stuff. Yeah, Mount Baker has some interesting stuff. One reason you might find that pyrite near the glacier is that the erosion is such that you're getting fresh rock, not as much oxidized rock. There is calculators and stuff on the internet where you can basically see how many feet to how many degrees, to a degree or a minute or whatever of latitude or longitude at a particular latitude. It will vary because the Earth is a sphere and they've got, Um, these aren't rectangles. What is your latitude? And if it's close to mine, I can give you a good estimate. Okay. I want to. 1 minute of latitude is always 1 nautical mile. Okay. Is that how they came up with it, Jean-Francois? You say, was that the definition of a nautical mile, maybe? Oh, let's see. Get one. So latitude is 1 minute equals, how much is a nautical mile? And P-Man, do you want it in metric or English measurements? If we're going to do this, we might as well make it as simple as possible. One nautical mile is 1.852 kilometers. Let's see where the feet is. My goodness. Or 6,076.11 feet. Okay. So your minute of latitude, or 1/60th of a degree, is what the hell? Why did that disappear? Okay, there it is. 6,076 feet per minute of latitude. Your longitude is going to vary. Per minute of longitude. Okay. Well, let's see. That's not correct. 1 longitude, 1 degree of longitude equals 2,000. Well, that's clearly not correct because at the North Pole it would be inches or less. So where's the calculator? Funny, you can go on the internet, and find something which is clearly incorrect. Latitude, longitude, distance indicator. Okay, come on. Distance calculator. Well, that's point A to point B. Although you could always just make them 1 minute different or whatever. Let's see. Here's one. Control C. Control V. That's a longitude latitude calculator. It's the cosine of the angle. Okay. Yeah, it depends on the thing. Yeah. Another thing you can do is on Google Earth, you can mark a point and then mark another point, and then you can, under the tools thing, you can actually measure the distance between those 2 points. So you can get you can do it in that manner also, which is probably going to be easier for a lot of people. If you know the exact distance you need, pick your starting point and then go north and south so many, north and west or east or whatever direction you want, the right number of feet. And you can do that by, as my math teacher used to call it, by guess and by gosh. In other words, instead of having a precise formula to calculate, like Jean-Francois says, it's 1 nautical mile times the cosine of the latitude, which would give you a precise answer. You can just, let's say with Google Earth, you can just put 2 points and check it and then adjust accordingly, and you'll get it pretty darn close. And the Google Earth also gives you a lat lon on the points too, if you set it that way. Jean-Francois says, any good GPS will give you the surface of any perimeter. Okay. The other thing is too, if you got waypoints and stuff when you're in the field, you can use the GPS pretty easily to find where you're going. I generally pre-calculate everything and then go out in the field. I'll already have the discovery, notice, and coordinates and all this other stuff. So I'll be slapping in everything according to pre-calculated coordinates. But that just makes it simple. I actually write the coordinates on the stakes or whatever too. And this, if I was in Arizona using 2x2 stakes, I'd have stakes with me. In Montana, I will usually just carry the tags and blaze and mark an appropriate tree. It's much easier than carry, because around here you got to have 4x4 stake minimum. 4x4 stake that sits up at least 4 feet. What do I charge to examine a claim for minerals and the best extraction method? My standard fee is $150 an hour plus expenses.
You mean 150 a day?
Sorry, $150 a day plus expenses.
I wish you were getting 100.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Hour,
but anyhow, if you're not near me, I probably couldn't go to it and look at it. If you send me samples, I can do some simple analyses and such. I'll do that usually for free. You send me a sample and say, okay, what does this look like, and is there gold in it, and this sort of thing. Interesting, Jean-Francois. So that would probably be the simple. We can discuss details if you want. Here's my email address. Hey, P-Man, there's my email address. You can send me something there and we can discuss it. But I say, especially under the circumstances right now, it's unlikely I'll do much field work during the winter, and during the summer I'll probably be very busy. But we can discuss it, and you can probably send me some stuff and I can take a look at it and that sort of thing. And we can go from there.
We can get to
what?
Spring, depending on where they are.
We'll just have to see. He's got my email. We can talk it over. We have plenty of time to talk it over, little one. But he's apparently far enough away that the lat lon grid that I have doesn't work. So anyhow, I say that's basically how I do it. I'm retired. I live very modestly. So I can live without, bringing extra money. I do, but I can live without it.
We won.
We won what?
Apparently, the Iowa caucuses.
Oh, well, yeah.
I'm taking a look now.
Yep.
Well, Decision Desk is projecting him to win.
Constantine, probably going to be a long time before I get to Georgia, although I do have family in North Carolina. I have a daughter and a son-in-law and a granddaughter. And during the summertime, I usually have a grandson there too. He's in college, so we shall see where he winds up. But even I like to travel, but since we moved up here to Montana, it's become a little bit more difficult because the summer we're just busy like crazy, and then during the winter doing maintenance or this or that, and I say it's one of those things. Also, right now I'm kind of concerned about being many days from home. Oh, Georgia on the border with Russia.
Different Georgia.
Yeah,
I wondered.
I was wondering.
Talking to Constance.
I'm sorry, Constantine. I'm getting old. That one went right past me. You told me before. That was just my brain's not working too well at times. I'm sorry. But who knows? The next couple of years, it may be safer to go over there than to stay here. I have no clue. It's just so bizarre right now. Did you hear the thing I read about what the FAA was looking for in their hiring? You can pay me in Kinkali, huh? A Red Sea cruise. I think you don't like me, Brian. Kinkali. I've never heard of those. Obviously, it's the local Georgian stuff, but that's interesting.
Now people are PO'd because the networks apparently were calling it before the polls closed.
Uh-huh.
And the left is screeching because they decided to violate their own policies not to close, not to call until after polls close or whatever.
Yeah.
Because this person says DeSantis is still going to lose by 20 plus.
Oh, yeah. Anyhow, so, yeah, I'm kind of staying pretty close to home, P-Man, in general. But people, send me samples, and I do some pretty basic tests. And if they want to do laboratory tests or whatever, as long as they pay for the freight and the testing, I usually, prep it and ship it, that sort of thing. Yeah. We just basically like to help people out, especially newbies, and keep from making expensive mistakes. Ooh, that sounds good, Constantine. Kinkali are Georgian meat dumplings.
I want a recipe.
The quad was a king quad without the electric stuff. I think it was like 98 to 2000 or something like that.
Wow.
But before they went to the electric shifting and electric this and electric that, or it was basically all mechanical linkages and stuff. It was
Looks like the largest margin victory ever.
I think it was a Suzuki King Quad, but it's a King Quad. And I say the people that I'm talking to about that, they know their stuff. They've been dealing with it a long time. So, yeah, basically he said it'll always get you home, that sort of thing. Just bulletproof. The newer ones, they're good quality, the new King Quads, but with all the electric stuff, there's more ways they can go wrong and kind of leave you stranded, or it just won't do anything, as opposed to, the older mechanical stuff. If it screws up, you can usually cobble to something. Say the problem with modern machines is they tend to have more electrical stuff that can go wrong and kind of leave you stranded. He says still the King Quad's as good as it gets nowadays. I have no information on Yamahas. Okay. If you want me to ask about Yamahas, let me know and I can. But you said what was the best, and that's what I said. What's the one that's the most reliable, will get you back? And he said without hesitation, the King Quad, the latest models that didn't have all the electrical stuff. Jean-Francois, when you're going to Africa, availability of parts and stuff may be the most important criteria, with reliability a close second. Yep, you're correct. Suzuki King Quad. Do you want me to ask about the Yamahas? Because I can certainly do so.
Wow.
Why not?
Okay. I wrote it down here, Jean-Francois. So I'll ask him about Yamaha quads and see what they have for that. And also Honda. Okay. I know Hondas generally are pretty reliable on most of their stuff, especially the engines. So I'll ask. Oh. No dealers, no Honda dealers. Okay, just Yamaha. Okay. I'll see what I can find out. No problem. And anyhow, that's it. Yeah. Here's another thing that somebody told me a long time ago about the old international trucks. And this is something that might come in handy depending upon the vehicle down there. He said the international trucks, and this guy was in Africa in the 50s, 1950s, they had a no weak link drive line. In other words, everything was built basically as tough as everything else. And as such, you never know what you were going to break. And so what they did was they picked what they wanted to break, which in this case, they had fully floating rear axles. So they would take the axles out of the rear end, put them in a lathe, and cut an 1/8 of an inch groove right near the end of the axle. And then they'd carry extra axles. And that way, if a shock load or something like that broke the drive line, it's almost certainly going to be a broken axle, which you can unbolt the end cap, take that out and then fish out the old axle, put the new one in, and bolt it in place. And that way you've got something that's easy to replace. You don't even need to jack the vehicle. It's relatively inexpensive. It's easy to carry spares. And that's what they did. So I'd say that might be a good idea for some vehicles. But yeah, if you've got a weak link, you want to make sure it's something that's easy to fix. If it isn't easy to fix, you might want to consider getting an aftermarket extra tough thing there and putting something else in a different, more easy to fixed spot.
I have a question that may or may not be mining related.
Okay. What?
According to the World Economic Forum, Venus was once Earth-like, but climate change made it uninhabitable.
Yes. At one time, they believe Venus was Earth-like, and atmospheric changes caused by solar wind and no magnetosphere stripped away a lot of stuff, and other things change. And
even as close to the sun as they are, I thought they were outside the Goldilocks belt.
No, they're inside it, basically. They're at the intercept. They're closer than we are. Okay. But the reason that the surface temperature is 600 degrees is because they have a very dense carbon dioxide atmosphere. But yeah, it was not.
According to this, Earth has 442 parts per million CO2, and Venus has 996,500 parts per million.
Yeah, plus sulfuric acid and a few other things. Yep. It's one of those things where, Mars was once more Earth-like too, and it again lost its atmosphere, which is why it's freezing now. So you bet, if you make huge changes to atmospheres, you can probably get huge changes to the climate. But yeah, it's not exactly like man-made climate change. No. Let's say it's all natural stuff. By the way, what do you think of that volcano in Iceland? Man, that is rocking. Wrong spot too. I think they're basically expecting the town to get wiped out. Let's see. Lava floods the entire city, raising temperatures. That's a movie. Goodness gracious. Yeah. That's a video there, what's actually the Iceland volcano erupts, but that's what I was looking for. Let's see. Iceland volcano. Slowing down after a day of destruction. Just wondering what's left of it. Houses are on fire. The eruption is proving to be the worst case scenario. Entire population evacuated. Defenses built after the eruption have been partially breached. Main road into town has been cut off by the flow of lava. Yeah, it's not looking good over there. Actually, Jean-Francois, it opened up a new fissure 2 days ago, something like that, real close to town. So yeah, it wasn't good. It's Iceland. It's never over in Iceland. It's just paused for an indefinite period of time. Yep. That's what a lava dike looks like. You know, an intrusive dike looks like in the growing phase. Oh. The reason you never moved to Japan is because of the quakes and volcanoes, huh? Yeah, I can understand. Isn't there gold in their hydrothermal system? Not much. According to Chris Ralph's thing, that oceanic shield volcanoes usually don't have very much. No. You're getting, you want more of the volcanoes that are in a subduction zone associated. Okay. No, more like where Tricky Dicky's at in the Philippines. Those kind of volcanoes are the ones that generally have it. You know, you want a subduction zone volcano. It was a very good video this week. Oh, definitely some is much more gold rich than others, Jean-Francois. You know, in a subduction zone volcano, you're reworking crust, and you're also releasing a lot of magmatic waters underneath the continental crust, things like that. It's just more common. The mid-oceanic shield volcanoes are magma from deep in the mantle, whereas the subduction zone stuff, it's much shallower magma sources. This is what I need. Winning lottery ticket? Yeah, that would be nice. Mount Erebus ejects several ounces of metallic gold. Yeah, Mount Erebus would be in Antarctica, I believe. Um, it was more in the area and the particular processes, the hydrothermal solutions moving through the rock, and the magmatic solutions that are the last ones as the magma cools tend to be very mineral rich because they're basically getting the minerals from a huge volume of rock and concentrating them. The ocean floor chimneys are generally mostly base metal, but there's no reason they couldn't have gold to my knowledge. Would depend again, what's the plumbing underneath it? But in general, I believe it's also a similar thing where you have water, in this case ocean water, seeping down through bedrock and then hitting a heat source and upwelling. But your gold would tend to be in a zone deeper than the surface at the bottom of the ocean. Those are going to be massive sulfide deposits. Magma may be fluid, but it's hardly uniform. For example, a lot of the chromium deposits around the world, chromium has a very high melting point, and they have what's known as a sill deposit, where you'll have like an intrusion of magma over an area, and the chromium minerals crystallize first, and they're very dense, and they settle through the melt and land on the rock, the plastic rock basically, at the bottom of the magma chamber. Okay. And so that would be called a sill deposit. And I'm not sure if nickel comes from any sill deposits or not, but I know chromium is mined from sill deposits. I think platinum group can also be in a sill deposit, but I'm not sure. If you go to Ore Deposits 101 and go to the episode called Sill Deposits, he can give you the details there. Ore Deposits 101 is some pretty good information. Well, subduction magma is more complex. Oceanic spreading setters are, I say, it's from deep magma. This is coming up from hundreds of miles deep over a long, long period of time. But the subduction zone stuff can be highly variable. It depends on a lot of factors. But a lot of it is also it cooks metamorphic rocks, bakes water out of them, and that water, again, under those temperatures and stuff, will dissolve certain minerals, one of which is gold. Mobilize it, and therefore it can be concentrated. That's the key. Is it's mobilized, and then when it gets to some point where the situation changes, it all precipitates in one place. You know? Yeah, rifts are the opposite of subduction. That's Iceland is a rift. Hawaii is a hot spot, oceanic mid plate thing. Cool, Jean-Francois. Is it orogeny or orogeny, Constantine? Is that supposed to be an O on the front? Let's orogeny. Orogeny is a term used to describe an area of the human body that has heightened sensitivity, the stimulation of which may generate a sexual response. Yeah. Yeah, it's a sedimentary mudstone, but was it? You can actually have gold deposits that are basically they can be metamorphic, where the original gold was actually placer gold. Hard rock or rock hard? I'm not sure, Jean-Francois. That was pretty good, Brian. I think the South African deposits are metamorphosed placers, but I'm not sure. Again, Ore Deposits 101 can clear that up. It's been a long time, but I believe that's the case with those. You can have all kinds of different ways the gold got in the rock, but that is one. You can have a placer deposit that is overlain, subducted, metamorphosed, and the gold never really moved. It's now just entombed in solid rock. Oh my goodness. That's the guy that did Ore Deposits 101, wasn't it, Jean-Francois? The placer was made from previous gold that was in hard rock that was weathered out, mountains weathered out, and, created placer deposits like you see in the Mother Lode of California. And then over many millions of years, they wound up getting subducted, heated, pressurized, and turned into rock. So that's what I meant by a placer deposit. This is just a conventional placer deposit, I believe. Oh. Let's see. How did the South African gold deposits form? Two major hypotheses, the placer model and the hydrothermal model. It's been going around. Let's see. American Scientist. Don't know if I trust them anymore. Everyone agrees the sediments of the Westwater Strand were originally carried in a system by braided rivers, had eroded material from the surrounding highlands and deposited clay, sand, and gravel at the edge of an inland sea. As the rivers emptied, heavier sediments such as large quartz pebbles and heavy minerals setting first, building gravel-rich deltas. For a million years, fluctuation of sea level continued to change the positions. Blah, blah, blah. This sequence grew many kilometers thick and was then overlaid by large eruptions of lava called flood basalts. Didn't know flood basalts in South Africa. The weight of these layers provided the heat and pressure necessary to transform the unconsolidated sediments into coherent sedimentary rocks. The placer model holds that these rivers carried small grains of gold and rounded pyrites into the basin, and then it's, concentrated by standard stuff. The hydrothermal model states that the sediments that wash into the basin contained very little or no gold. Instead, gold-rich hot fluids emanating from deep within the Earth's crust added gold to the basin long after the sediments consolidated into rock. The gold precipitated from these fluids along chemically favorable horizons within the basin, corresponding to the layers of conglomerate. Okay, so basically, they're not sure. Both theories agree that most of the gold appears to be hydrothermal, concentrated in small fractures around pyrite and carbon within the conglomerates. Dozens of scientific papers. Another interesting observation is that much of the pyrite associated with the gold in the conglomerates and some of the gold grains themselves are rounded. In the placer model, rounded pyrite and gold results from abrasion during stream transport and wind action during deposition. In the hydrothermal model, dissolved sulfur would react with rounded iron oxide mineral grains, magnetite replacing the oxygen minerals with sulfur, creating rounded pyrite. Most proponents of this model dispute the existence of rounded gold grains, because observations of these can accommodate either model. A smoking gun is needed to choose. Could be both. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised, Mindfinder. Reality tends to be more complicated than we would like. Oh. Okay. It's getting kind of late. Anyone else? Got any questions or anything? I'll be putting up a video this week on the impact mill. It's basically done. I have never tried using wedges and feathers. Okay. So I have no experience with it. And I think you generally need to have a fairly hard rock to make that work. If you had a softer rock, they're just going to tend to crush the rock around it, I would think. Okay. But I would not think that you could bust up soft rock with them. On the other hand, soft rock's usually pretty easy with other methods. Has anyone used a disc brake piston as a crucible? I don't know. it would depend. Oh, mortar. Okay. No, I haven't. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work. But one thing, if you're trying to do a mortar and pestle sort of thing, it's good to have the mortar pretty tall so you can take your big, heavy steel pestle and get some distance on it when you're driving it in to get the velocity to get the energy you want. Okay. Another thing you can do, I designed one this way. I can actually put my Hilti onto my pestle if I really want to do some mortar and pestling easy. Um, but yeah, something like that should work, Jean-Francois. You just want something, a good long striking distance to get that momentum up. Yep. Oh. Anything else, anybody? Water. I need water. You're going to want to make sure your slide tube is thick enough that it's not going to bend too easy. Weight and size of the pestle and the base plate of the mortar. 18 inches sounds good to me, Jean-Francois. I think mine's about 16 or something. The mortar base can be fairly thin. You know, quarter inch would probably, get beat up, but half inch should be adequate. Diameter, well, again, this is where you got to see how heavy is the weight, how strong are you, and this, that, and the other. I've got a steel ball into a hemispherical steel cap, and as such, it fits pretty well. If you're going a square cut rod and a square cut bottom, you're probably going to have it close to the diameter of your outer tube, but not too close. You don't want it to jam in there. Okay. On the other hand, if you got like a 1-inch rod and a 2-inch tube, you're going to be missing a lot of stuff. So I would say, something like 75% of the diameter, 80% of the diameter on a let's say a 2-inch bar. 1/2-inch thick mortar base should be fine. And that would be carbon steel. Guys, I figured out what you were saying, Jean-Francois. Yeah, that would work. You'd probably want to weld a flat base on it or something to make it a little easier to just sit somewhere. But so I'd go, again, it depends on how big a bar can you lift and how big a socket you're going into. But everything else being equal, I'd go for about 75-80% of the diameter of the base for the rod itself, if that's a weight that's really reasonably easy to manipulate. And you could also potentially have a piece of solid rod welded onto a pipe to make it lighter and get the diameter that you want. Also, I mean, the more surface area you have, the faster it goes, but the coarser it tends to be. Okay. Mine is about, I don't know, 3.5 inches in diameter, something like that. They work. just not very fast. And you probably want to have, when you head out too, is get a set of sieves, because that way you can basically recirculate, crush, take the fines out, put the coarse back in, that sort of thing. That'll get you more consistent sampling. That would depend on what you're sampling and everything. If you're going for panning, you want your sieve to fit comfortably in the pan. Like with my, where is it? I had it earlier. My gold pan. Anyhow, my 10-inch pans would take an 8-inch sieve comfortably. Okay? You wouldn't want a 12-inch sieve. The other thing you want to consider is weight, nesting ability, and things like that. I am thinking if you're going to be putting it in your backpack, you'd want them nesting. Now, I have a sieve set. I bought it from Keen Engineering. Let me see here. It's a really cool thing. Let's see if they still got it. Keen Engineering. Let's see if they still carry it. Shop. Hello? Got a search bar anywhere? Wow. Books and videos, dredges, recovery equipment, diving equipment, engine and pumps, books and videos, Keen merchandise. Man, you'd think a search bar would be nice. Let's try recovery equipment. Let's see. Dredges, dry washers, driving equipment, winches, prospecting tools. That's probably it. Scales, picks, shovels, crevice tools, detecting, scales, loops, magnifiers, other prospecting accessories, sieves. There we go. Wow, they've come down cheaper. Okay. Let's see. No, that's not the one I wanted. There's some stackable sieves. Sluice recovery. Had one. It had a whole bunch of different sieve screens you could put in the one thing. Huh. They don't seem to have it anymore. Huh. It was a nice little set because you had a whole bunch of different sieve screens that fit in the bottom of the sieve holder, which would go into a bucket or into your pan. It had a pan that went over the top. It looked very much like this right here. Okay. why have sieves for field exploration? You want to be able to size your material for a variety of reasons. For example, you want to be able to screen out larger rocks in order to, pan it, this, that, the other. If you're looking for hard rock material, you may be crushing, then sieving it to small size, grinding the oversize, or just take a larger amount, screen it down to something fairly small where you can pan the microfine stuff. What's a good sequences of mesh to have? If you're going to be doing placer 2, I would say a 1/2 inch, a 1/4 inch, an 1/8 inch, probably something around a 16 or 20 mesh, something around a 50 or 60 mesh, something around 100 mesh. That should give you a pretty good selection of size. I say this particular one had 10 different screens in it, a pan and a sieve holder and room to put things like your sniffer bottle and all that other stuff. It was really kind of a cool thing. It looked like that. Okay, there's the link right there. You can click on it. You can see there's a pan on top of the sieve holder. But that's a very nice thing because you have a lot in one package. You've got 10 different sieves and a gold pan and, I say, the holder so you can put it in a bucket and use it for whatever you need. It worked out really well for me. Stainless steel colander can work okay. 64 mesh. That's not a bad, if you only had one sieve, that's not bad. But I say I've used my stuff for everything from, over at the mill. I will use that to sieve my 1/2 inch plus to 1/2 inch minus so that I can put the 1/2 inch plus through the darn jaw crusher. So I'd say it was a very good purchase. I'm not sure what the thing was. Let's see. Gold pan and sieve set. Let's see. The advantage was it was extremely compact. They make a lot of stackable sieve sets. I would definitely get a stackable sieve set, where they're nested in each other. Apparently, the replaceable screen thing is not near as common as I got before. Huh. They may not make that anymore.
Oh, that would suck.
Yeah, it was really nice. Because I really did like that because it was so compact. I could put it in my luggage.
Wasn't that part of that set that you got from Teen or something?
Yep, exactly.
Maybe they have it on their website.
I just looked on their website, little one.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
Maybe they can tell people where to get one.
I don't know. Boy, I'd have to. I don't see what I had, but I would go with, stackable sieves and a large placer pan and a small finishing pan like what I've got here. This is the one I like. You know, the Stand Sport 10.5-inch gold pan. Polka face. Right now it's 18 below zero outside, as you can tell. T-shirt, not bad. My temperature is 98.6. But outside, I've gone a couple of times outside just dressed like this to get some samples and things.
And came rushing back in.
It's, as my friend Joachim from Sweden said, we have a saying, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. And to a great extent, he's correct. Waterproof insulated boots. I got thermal underwear bottoms on right now. I had thermal underwear top on over this. And, coat, warm woolly hat. Like this. See, the only thing that's sticking out is my face. And it's, I say, you just do it. Now, if it was this temperature and 20-mile-an-hour winds, yeah, that would be not only unpleasant, but very dangerous very quickly. Even when I'm like sweeping the sidewalks and stuff at these temperatures, my fingers start getting cold in the ski gloves in 30 minutes. Mm-hmm.
Very bizarre.
What little one?
Joy Reid accuses white Christian islands of wanting to have people of color bow to them.
Nah.
Joy is being crazier than usual.
Projection. Oh. So that's how we deal with it here, Polka Face. The biggest problems come from frozen pipes and cars that won't start. The truck, I tried to start it a few nights ago just to fire it up and get it warm because it was going to hit like 35 below that night. Couldn't get it started. It was only about 20 below. Not enough battery, gasoline not vaporizing enough. The van, haven't had any trouble starting it. Down to around 20 below or a little more. It's gasoline fuel injected Dodge Caravan, like, I don't know, 98 or something like that. Works fine. One of the ladies that lives here, she couldn't get her parking brake to release. My guess is that it was hot. She'd been driving it around, splashed stuff up. Then when she parks it, she puts the parking brake on, and all that liquid freezes. So when you try and take it off, it doesn't. Update on the MC would be great. MC microphone? We have block heaters. I mean, the truck has a block heater, but where it's parked, it's not near a plug. And
we really do have to get them going, though.
Yeah. Oh, we will. When it warms up, we'll fire them up again. Make sure the battery's fully charged and stuff. But don't really need it as a truck. Next time we'll probably need it to move is when we're headed up to Great Falls to get the suspension worked on. I mean, we really don't need a truck that much in the middle of winter. Just the van seems to work fine. Really, Jean-Francois? That's crazy. What's new? I know Lauren had some difficulty starting his diesel today. Actually, it was last night. But he's got a diesel blower shop heater thing that he can, you know, put underneath the front end and throw a tarp over it if needed. So I'm not sure how hard that was to start. But yeah, starting internal combustion engines is interesting. Oh, and by the way, um, Lauren got a Bobcat skid steer from a guy. And Bobcats, the later ones, they're like tier 4 emissions or something. I don't know what it is, but it's a environmental rules and stuff. And so they have all these features and electronic stuff and whatever. And one of the things is apparently you have to service the engine so often or else it won't run. I mean, the computer says, well, you haven't reset the service engine thing in this long, so therefore I'm assuming that it's not running right, so screw you. Now, the guy who had this before, who had claustrophobia, was running this machine and it started giving him the little warning light, on this, that, and the other. And, you're going to time out in, 5 minutes and you're going to time out in a minute. So anyhow, he figures, what the hell? It's check engine light, right? Nope. When it says that's it shut it all off. Engine dies. And the bucket was in a place where he couldn't get the door open to get out of the cab. Considering his claustrophobia, that was less than ideal. However, he was able to kick out the window to get out of it, SA. Cold engine start, yeah, is pretty inefficient, but that's what you got to do. Oh, if it's government regulation, it can't possibly be. You can't sue anybody for complying with regulations, I wouldn't think. It's just stupid regulation. But then, that's nothing new, is it? Oh, goodness. But yeah, so that's our big thing here is frozen pipes and hard starting cars. Traction's usually not too bad because it's so freaking cold that it never melts to turn into ice. But later on in the spring, we may have situations like that where it melts and then refreezes. That's not a good thing. If you got good speed, like on the freeway, it's dry as can be. You can go 65 miles an hour on the freeway right now, but you should be going significantly slower than normal in town because if you need to stop or whatever, you're going to have drastically reduced traction. We're driving around in a 2-wheel drive Dodge Caravan today without any problems. We had once it slipped a little bit when I was accelerating or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
The dry, crunchy snow is not bad.
It's not bad. It's easily workable. So that's our situation here. It's not bad. We're comfortable right now. The picture of Eva was because the power went out at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I got to give what is Northwest Energy? Is that what they're? Northwest Energy. I got to give them this. They had a technician out here within 2 hours who'd found the popped line breaker and replaced it with a larger one. It was they call it a shotgun fuse or something. Anyhow, it's pretty obvious where the problem was. You can see them when they're tripped. You can see them from the ground. And he said when he climbed up there, he said it was a little bit light, so he put in a bigger one, and so that's why Eva was all dressed up in her warm woolies there. I just thought so cute. I'd take a picture. But it was a little nervous wracking until we knew that we got the power back on. Although we do have a propane heater and currently 15 gallons of propane in big tanks plus adapter hoses and stuff. So we can do a lot of heating. This one did not. That is what I've heard too, Honey Bunny. It's right up there. I was wide awake on the computer when the power went off. I did not hear anything. Just the power went off. So whatever that means probably would tell somebody something. There you go. Sounds good to me, Jean-Francois. That may be why it tripped. You know, it may have, as they've been weak or something, and just popped easy. I never have. You take care, Jean-Francois. Hopefully you'll get here around the start time next year. There wasn't anything really major to worry about going back and looking it over again, so I wouldn't worry about it. You know what? I'm hoping a lot of things don't happen, Poker Face, but I'm sure some of them are going to. That's what's really pissing me off. And as far as I can see, the vast majority are completely unnecessary. They're easily avoidable calamities. So I'm quite annoyed about all this. But we're in reasonably good shape. So what the heck? Well, I think I'm going to follow Jean-Francois' lead and call it a night. So, Honey Bunny, up to you. I think the markets are planned, but sometimes it doesn't go according to plan. So, let's see. Over and out and over. Sounds good, Brian. So, happy prospecting and keep it safe out there. That's pretty good, Honey Bunny. Good timing. Come on. There we go. Click, click.